Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and we're talking about James Fishback today. He's the Black Horse America First candidate running in Florida, a real long shot, but his policies are bringing up a lot of civil discourse, I would say. He wants to bring in a degeneracy or sin tax into Florida for OF models. So we're going to get into that and a bunch more. Hopefully, when you leave the show today, you'll have a couple facts you didn't know before.
Yes. And please also don't forget to subscribe because it really does help us. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. And we'll start by saying, well, that as well. We also read all the comments. So if you want to leave us what you're thinking, or if you know something about a story we're doing or want to say something, we will read it. So there's that. We're also streaming on RUMBLE. And also going to say hello to Nan, who's always here. Hello.
Thank you. And we would love to know what you're cooking today because you tell us what you're cooking every day.
Who says, ¿Qué tal? And good afternoon. So good afternoon, Nan. Thank you for being here. I always get confused between Nan and Neo because they're so close together, the names. So hopefully Nan is the one that is always cooking. If not, Neo, if you're here, also let us know what you're cooking. Everybody let us know what you're cooking.
And thanks for all the likes. We got 4 likes. We have 6 people watching, so that's almost 100% like, right? Let's get into the first story, though. And I found this one really interesting. That's kind of why I made it the top story here. Mm-hmm. Maybe let's hit the personality politics first, though.
Sorry. Okay, let's go back to where we were.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
I spent hours making all of those and then I don't use them. From TMZ, it says a Florida gubernatorial I can never say that word. Gubernatorial candidate says OF models need to do something more productive with their lives, and he wants them to literally pay for their sins.
Yeah, this is interesting. We'll get into the clip here, but James Fishback has been making a lot of waves in Florida. He's a real long shot candidate, but he is the America First candidate. The issue with him winning that election is he's going up against Byron Donalds, which is a super heavy hitter. But even if he loses here, he is making quite a name for himself on the national stage. So if Byron Donalds gets the call for VP or for another position on the Hill later on, after he's governor and he gets pulled away, James Fishback may be that fill-in, or he may just have be setting himself up for a good position in Byron Donalds' cabinet.
What I would say to Sophie Rain very simply is this: you are young, you are smart, and you are capable, and you can do a heck of a lot better. You have 2 choices if I'm governor, Sophie. You can pay us the $42 million in back taxes you owe on your lifetime OnlyFans earnings, or you can stop doing that and doing something noble and worthwhile, and I look forward to celebrating your wins there.
You're definitely calling OnlyFans sinful. And that really gets to a real core cultural issue. You know, pornography is out there. It is legal. So if it's legal, why a sin tax?
Well, Harvey, it's really simple. I don't want young girls, young women in Florida who are smart and capable to be told that they have to do this for a living. They can be nurses, doctors, veterinarians, bus drivers. They can even be, dare I say, stay-at-home moms. The Christian and American thing for us to do for these young women is to not allow them to be exploited and abused by that disgraceful platform known as OnlyFans.
Why do they have to be nurses and housemakers? Why can't they be lawyers and doctors?
Harvey, they can be doctors, they can be lawyers, and Harvey, listen to this, they can even be the president of the United States. It's not personal. I just don't want a society where we're putting that sort of immorality on a pedestal. If I'm elected on August 18th, 2026 as the Republican candidate to succeed Ron DeSantis, we're passing a 50% tax on all OnlyFans income. And guess what? For Sophie Rain, who is a proud resident of Florida, that means she's going to have to pay $42 million, $42 million, Charles, to the state of Florida, which I'm going to use for 2 purposes. We're going to increase public school teacher pay, and we're going to improve school lunches.
We've spoken to her. She said, nobody told me that I have to be on OnlyFans. And I think there are a large number of women who would say, no one told me to do this. This is something I chose to do. And you want to disincentivize them from making that choice.
Our society, Charles, has told them to do that. The way that someone like Sophie Rain, who is young and smart and capable, the way that we have venerated and exemplified and commodified and objectified her and her body, she is effectively being told to do so by a system that puts her on that pedestal. The sick men who follow her and pay her, and the sick middleman who called OnlyFans, who financialized that entire transaction, she is being told. I don't believe that Sophie does have a choice.
Do you have any concern that you're running afoul of the First Amendment?
And I just want to make sure we don't get dinged. I do want to see the full interview here because I have been wanting to talk about James Fishback for quite a while. The opportunity just hasn't come up. And this particular topic, I think, has a lot of different veins to kind of talk about here.
By basically foreclosing somebody's lawful option, because I have to tell you, when we did our documentary, we interviewed several stay-at-home moms who say they are more present with their children because they're not a nurse. They can make enough money to live comfortably and be around their children all the time.
Stay-at-home moms have existed for the entirety of our nation's history, and they were doing sourdough starters and churning butter and raising their children and rearing their children without needing to sell their bodies online to sick men around the world.
Well, I mean, there was no internet. But you're talking about they were churning butter. They didn't have the option of an internet.
Oh, so Charles, so in the 1950s, if the internet had existed, those women would have felt compelled to sell their bodies online? I don't think so.
You call it a sin tax. If they are committing a sin, are the people who are paying them, who are their subscribers, also committing the sin, and why aren't they being taxed?
They are committing a sin, and they will also be taxed indirectly because now those earnings are going to be filtered through. So it's all connected through the financial transactions.
Well, and also she may just choose to leave Florida.
They can get out. They can all get out. They're not adding anything to the state, Charles. If OnlyFans models want to whore around downtown Miami and want to turn us into some red world brothel, I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Okay, and we did play at a 1.25 speed. We play all of our clips at that so we don't get dinged with censorship. That being said, I wanted to play that entire thing. A lot of shows are just playing segments. I love the fact that he went on TMZ and they really had a lot of pushback for him, and he had answers for all those questions. So you really get to know the candidate if you're going to vote for him. He's obviously he's running on a moral base here. I personally like it, but a lot of people aren't. But at least he's putting it up front, and he's not trying to double speak and trying to get both sides. He's really saying, this is who I am. These are the kind of policies I'm going to bring in.
And I mean, it is just at least starting a conversation, which even if, and it seems pretty out there that it would be passed, especially in Florida with Miami and other cities that are big into that, and a lot of people making money through degeneracy, in my opinion. But at least the subject is out there, and at least it is being discussed. And maybe even some people that had that idea might think, oh, it could be possible to do something like that. Because again, I do agree with him in the sense that it's not, in my opinion, it's not fully their choice. And we just released a video about the feminization of society. And I do think society as a whole and how we talk to and relate to each other has been highly impacted by the estual revolution, I have to say it that way, and feminism. So even if they think that it's fully their choice, well, there's decades of history of feminism and pushing for these kinds of things to actually become normalized within society.
Well, we're going to get her response in just a moment. That being said, it's interesting to incentivize certain behaviors in the state and de-incentivize other behaviors through a tax system. What's most likely going to happen is she's going to leave the state and go to another state that's more friendly on taxes, just like billionaires do. Mm-hmm. So I'm all for the people of the state kind of voting for the candidates that they believe in and that have similar moral standings that they do. So I don't know if this is going to pass. He's a real long shot here. I don't think he's going to beat Byron Donalds. And it's kind of a shame that the strongest America First candidates running are running up against the hardest candidates to run against, which are big-time MAGA candidates like Byron Donalds and like Vivek Ramaswamy in Ohio. America First has another strong candidate there. He might be a little cringe, but I actually like him more than Vivek. But I would prefer if both those America First candidates ran in states they could actually win. I just don't see it happening here. Mm-hmm. But I do like the conversation he's bringing up on a national stage. People do have the right to vote what they want to have tax incentives for and what they want to have tax incentives against.
Mm-hmm. And it is an interesting tactic because it is saying, well, it is not illegal, but you will pay heavily for it to improve the state. Usually the taxes are not fully used or allocated how they should be, but at least it's not saying we're outright banning it and we're bringing back full morality laws, but rather, well, you're making a lot of money doing something that is not beneficial to both yourself and the state. So,
okay, let's get into her response here.
Locke says, quote, Sophie Rang claps back at potential Florida Governor James Fishback for trying to tax OF creators 50% of their earnings.
Yeah, and part of the thing with this, if she was the only OF model to kind of clap back, and I understand she's a very prominent OF model. I've never heard of her. That being said, if she would have said nothing, this story would have got a lot less national exposure. This conversation wouldn't have been brought to the national stage. Fishback's unlikely to win in Florida. So, but now that this conversation has been elevated, Byron Donalds, if he wins, might actually implement something like this, especially.
I think it would be pretty hard to actually implement it, but
I think it would be a lot easier than you think. There is a huge religious faction within Florida. I used to actually live in Florida.
Never in my whole life did I think that I would wake up and see a Florida politician trying to start beef with me for clout. So he's proposing a sin tax on bops where we would have to pay 50% to the state on top of the 37 I already paid to the government. And I would be more than happy to pay that if multi-billion-dollar corporations were also being properly taxed. But surprise, they're not. I never usually get into politics, but there are clearly better ways to raise funds from actual corrupt businesses in our country. I think that people also fail to realize that there are so many creators on this platform that do this job because they're struggling. So to tax them like that when they're literally doing it just to support their families is sad.
okay.
I would much rather continue donating directly to people in need because we all really know where our tax dollars go. Never in my whole
He's not, I highly doubt. Now, I don't know, but I highly doubt that she's donating large sums of money to anything of any good cause other than herself. That being said, Fishback is very, very smart here, and other politicians in other districts and other states should pay attention. Now, when you're so outmatched in the polls and you're expected to lose, you have to make waves somehow. He made waves by kind of having a little gathering at a Starbucks in Disney first. That made international news. A lot of channels talked about that.
Well, because they tried to remove him from the premises.
Yeah, they try to remove him, but again, now he's going after an OF model, and it's very distinct voter blocks he's going after. So this works, and especially because it's getting so much national and international coverage.
But even the rhetoric from TMZ and her now, which is what I reacted to, was TMZ was saying, well, they're doing it because they want to. Nobody's telling them they have to do it. They're free to do whatever they want. They're young. Yes, they could be nurses, but I mean, they make good money doing this, so why can't they? And then she goes on to say, there's a lot of people, women struggling that are on OF having to do this. So which one is it for this narrative? Because both of the things they're trying to say don't, and it's always the same excuse. It's either, well, they can do whatever they want, and if they make money for it, well, even better for it, their body, their choice, etc. But then there's also a lot of the actual OF models, but also people that defend them saying, well, they're struggling people, they're struggling mothers, they're struggling students, so they have to do this. So either you're obligated because you have no better options, or you're doing it because you want to.
Most women that do,
and they don't do well in it.
Most women that do this make next to nothing. Yeah. I used to be a security guard at a bar, and there were a lot of women that did this, and I would just get into conversations like, how much do you actually make doing this? And a lot of them make $20 a month, and they wish they had never done it.
Because now it's all out there.
I think the website itself really funnels to a few big creators, so they'll have these big dollar models that will actually make news and headlines that will kind of get other young incentivize and take advantage of other young women thinking, well, I can quit my career and make millions of dollars, when the truth of the matter is you're going to be lucky to make $25 and you're going to have sold a lot of your morality, and you're not going to feel good about it at the end of the day.
And of your privacy, like those are things you can never get back from the internet. Mm-hmm. Even if you delete it and you think it's all gone, somebody might have probably screenshotted it and the Wayback Machine and etc., even if it's supposedly private.
Well, we're seeing a lot of articles come out now of very successful models that are entering the twilight years of their life, and they're getting married, and they're asking people not to watch the videos. They're requesting that a lot of these sites take them down. That's not going to happen. This is going to stick with them, and there should be consequences for their action. At least
there are for them.
Well, at least they were successful and they made millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. What about the girls that made nothing, and then that content is on there for the rest of their life?
But the thing is, on the other side, do we want to get paternalistic about it and say, well, they're making bad choices, but they should, even if they don't understand the consequences, we should now help them understand those consequences? Or saying, well, if we want to steer society back into a place of morality and of values and of actual virtue, well, then we have to do something, even if it is under the legislative or the tax branch.
Well, and
that could help steer it, because right now it's all floating all over the place.
This is the great thing about the United States. If they bring in that tax and she doesn't want to be part of that tax, she can move states. And that's what billionaires do as well. There's going to be certain states that are going to welcome certain groups of people or billionaires, or be more incentivized to help out small businesses. So you can literally pick and choose your states. And because there's red states and blue states and purple states, you really have your choice of where you want to go. If you don't like Florida, there's always California. If you don't like California, a lot of people are voting with their feet now and going to Texas. Okay.
I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
Do you want to go into the next portion of the story?
Because I forgot what I was going to say. Gamalda says, quote, Nick Fuentes praises Florida Governor candidate James Fishback, calling him smart and funny. So let's see.
And it's interesting, and I wanted to get Fuentes' take on this because Tucker Carlson already brought James Fishback on his show, and he is backing him, and that's one half of the America First kind of social media push. Fuentes would be the other half, and it seems like he's getting support from both halves here.
To grow a percent, $25. Love the show and I love the message of taking your own side with America First. Been an avid viewer since October. Should have been sooner. Any thoughts on Fishback and Tucker interview, or are you still gathering intel before commenting?
You know, I really like what I've seen from Fishback. I have to say I'm a bit conflicted still for a few reasons. I don't want to hurt him. That's kind of my first thing, is I don't want to speak out of turn and hurt a politician by association if they're an ally. And the other thing is I didn't vet him myself. But you know what? He seems really smart. I was really impressed with him on Tucker. Very impressed. And I hadn't, I've seen some stuff from him, but his social media is very impressive. His TikTok, his Instagram, I see him everywhere. Very well spoken, very sharp. Funny too. He said Byron Donalds wants to turn Florida into a Section 8 ghetto. That's hilarious, actually. The way I love how matter-of-factly Byron Donalds wants to turn Florida to Section 8 ghetto. It's so good. So you know what? I'm pretty impressed with him. I like him.
Okay,
I think.
You can leave it there. And I think Byron Donalds is a strong candidate, and Fishback doesn't have a chance here. But the conversations he's bringing up, and I think Fishback is the model of the new kind of politician going forward, where they know how to make national headlines, state-run headlines, and they're going to really bring up a dialogue which they've already thought through to first principles, and they really know how to debate by going on shows like TMZ or having debates online and actually defending their first principles.
And I think as we've been analyzing and talking about Nick Fuentes, again, I'll continue to say I think he is a good diagnostician, but has the prescription all wrong. And then how
You
to
say that every
solve
time.
things.
Why don't we get into what he said here?
But with James Fishback or the candidate in Ohio that are more America First, I do think that now, especially now that Charlie Kirk is gone and has been unfortunately assassinated, Nick Fuentes is showing up as kind of a candidate maker, as an America First candidate maker. Like, if you get his endorsement, you might actually go farther. And he also has the ear of the younger people, which is very important, and which is something that I think, especially now that Charlie Kirk is gone, MAGA and that side has kind of let off to the wayside because of their infighting, and they're not concentrating enough for the midterm specifically either.
Well, I think Byron Donalds is pretty much a shoo-in candidate, but he's going to have to make a kind of a big tent movement within Florida, meaning he's going to need some of the traditional GOP people that are running to run that state, and he's going to need America First as well. So Fishback has really brought himself to prominence as the America First representative in Florida. So I expect even if he loses that race, which he probably will, he'll have a place within either Byron Donalds' cabinet or brought up to the national stage through either J.D. Vance or whoever else wins in 2028.
Mm-hmm. And I do like Byron Donalds and when he was kind of really batting for MAGA, but now that there's this division, well, the more things are coming into question. But I think they can even help each other more than they want to hurt each other at this moment, and especially now that we're seeing the chaos and mayhem, and Tim Pool once again with his Civil War premonitions that continue to kind of actually become true. It's more useful, in my opinion, right now to kind of try to unite MAGA and America First rather than continue the infighting, especially with the midterms so close.
Well, I'm also interested.
And like piggyback on each other, off of each other.
When he makes national news like this, it's very likely a reporter is going to ask Byron Donalds what his view is on this tax policy. And I would love to see what his view is. So, yeah, it really lets you not only know Fishback as a candidate, but the other candidates, if the media is actually honest and brings up these conversations through questions to Byron Donalds or the other candidates. There is also the debate stage, so they may bring up this question.
And I do think questions like this are more prescient and more prominent right now, and more people are more willing to hear it. The public is more willing to hear it and entertain it because, and I forget the creator's name, but he did a good kind of summary of what has been happening culturally and how the shift has been taking place from like ultra wokeness, progressivism, you can't say anything, cancel culture, Me Too, all the way through to now when these kinds of ideas and the morality of the country and what's right, what's wrong, and more right-wing scary candidates and people are coming to prominence like Nick Fuentes and him being allowed even to be on interviews on YouTube, for example, even if not himself on the platform. It is interesting that the time that we've arrived at, and we're seeing the protests in Minnesota and elsewhere in the US, it feels different than, for example, 2020. And even with the music, this guy, the creator, was analyzing the music, and trap music was huge, and Drake was huge, and all of these, entertainers, very specific, one kind, were the ones at the forefront. And now that kind of music is dying out. They're not releasing and not having the same kind of plays that they used to 2-3 years ago.
So what are you saying?
That now country music is back, and country music is having this resurgence. So culturally, I think we're at a point and a moment in time, because of everybody being tired of woke, where these kinds of questions might actually have some backing and might implement some actual change, rather than just being censored and not being able to even ask if we should maybe tax only OF models to stop them from doing it.
Yeah, I think it has a lot less to do with whether it's country music or hip hop music, and more that the fact that on the national stage, Donald Trump is trying to build an identity for the United States. So when we start talking about morality and things like this, it gets into these political conversations because an identity is currently being formed on a national stage, but also on a state stage. You're seeing individual states really trying to grasp for a firm identity. Okay.
There we go. But let's move on to, because we have also been mentioning, because he's been getting a lot of attention from his reporting in Minnesota and the fraud in Minnesota, Nick Shirley. And you have this undercurrent of ideas where influencers are all part of three-letter agencies, or at least
intelligence agencies,
in some kind of collusion with intelligence agencies.
Well, apparently Candace Owens thinks the same thing, because she was accusing Fuentes today of being an intelligence agent, and Alex Jones was accusing Candace, and then there's me accusing them all of being intelligence agents.
But Nick Fuentes did recently mention Nick Shirley, and Nick Shirley was also asked about Nick Fuentes because they're around the same age and they're the same generation and have, I think, the same or similar pull with the audiences that they have.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about Shirley. I actually brought this clip up for a different reason, but I'll let you talk about that after we watch the clip here.
From Fuentes updates, Nick Fuentes calls out Rumble for not giving him a contract, but offering one to Nick Shirley, although he did say he kind of likes Nick Shirley.
Yeah, and I like Shirley, even if I think he's probably an intelligence agency, working for an intelligence agency. He still does good reporting, and yeah. And one more thing. Nick Shirley actually did an interview the other day, and I think it was the perfect interview to do. He did it with a left-wing outlet known as Channel 5 that kind of appeals to a much younger left demographic. I've been watching them for years, even though I'm not left-wing. Their reporting kind of hits both sides, but with a heavy left-leaning bias. But they had a lot of pushback, and he answered a lot of questions, and he pushed back upon them as well. So if you haven't seen it, Channel 5 did a great interview. It was about an hour with Nick Shirley.
What the fuck is up with Rumble, man? So ghetto. We were dealing with this in December. I go live every night, and the stream's freezing up. The stream's freezing. Drop frames is what is that? That's crazy. I didn't even know. People are saying, yes, I had no idea. I glanced over. I'm like, the viewership's not super high tonight. And then I see, I have my phone in my pocket. Usually I have it here. My guy's texting me, oh yeah, the stream's like freezing. Okay, so no contract and the fucking shit doesn't work. That's crazy. No, that's crazy though. How about that, huh? Chris Pavlovsky, Nick Shirley, we would love to give you a deal to come on Rumble. Hey, oh, what about me? We forgot about the other Nick. Did you forget about the other Nick that's actually pulling millions of viewers to your fucking platform? Hello? Nick Shirley, and I like Nick Shirley. I talked to him. He seems like a good guy. But it's crazy. I'm on this generational run. Million views. I'm bringing millions of viewers to your platform. Nick Fuentes, who? I don't know who that is. Never heard of him. Nick Shirley, please, can we suck your dick? We will
Sorry about that.
Love to pay you oh, hey, what about me? I'm the one bringing millions of viewers here already for fucking free.
Okay, you can leave it there. And sorry for the language. Sorry for the language on that clip. I didn't realize that he had so many expletives. That being said,
But it
I
is
think there's a strategy for Rumble to have here to actually give Nick a contract, not because they agree with his views, but because he pushes the boundaries of what free speech is more than any content creator. So it signals to all other content creators, we are still the free speech platform. We're going to stand up for free speech content creators. And there's a lot of content creators getting banned overseas, whether that's in the EU, the UK, Canada right now, because of the legislation that's being brought in. Rumble can pick up those content creators for very cheaply once they're banned in their own country, and really kind of set this rebel atmosphere of we are free speech and we will defend these people. They also have deep ties with the current administration. So if a lot of these content creators in the EU, in the UK start getting banned, they can possibly get citizenship and distribute from the US on Rumble exclusively.
Well, that's like a sueño guajiro. I don't even know how to say it in English, but like a far-fetched dream. But I do think Rumble should prioritize their infrastructure, number one, because that is a reason why I think it's a barrier to entry for a lot of people, because it is so hard to get used to and glitchy, and all the algorithm doesn't work much. But you were saying also, like, why are, exactly to your point, why are they giving these big contracts to pretty milquetoast, easy people that already have channels elsewhere and having to pull them from there, and with their helping their audience comes over, when you have a giant basket of people that are or will probably be banned soon, that you could pay a lot less for, but their audiences and the respect that you would get for incentivizing that free speech and standing on your promise of free speech.
I would also like to see cross-pollination or Rumble kind of come to the defense of X. X right now is under attack on a global basis. It would be nice to see Rumble kind of stand up, or somebody try to stand with them. I think it would have a good add-on effect to Rumble. I think the audience has a lot of cross-pollination. I could even see X buying Rumble one day, because they're having a lot of trouble with long format content. They work very good as short format blips, memes for news on the ground, but Rumble really works well for long format, and they kind of have it worked out if they would just fix their interface a little bit. One other thing I would say is, I think they take Fuentes for granted. Everybody had Fuentes kind of banned. Rumble let him back on the platform. There was a huge surge of people going to Rumble for Fuentes. Even if Rumble disagrees with his views, he is the most banned person. They know he can't go anywhere else, so they don't want to offer him a contract. But if they kind of stick by him, it signals to all other content creators worldwide, we're going to stick by you even if you're pushing the boundaries.
But Nick did look a little bit like, what about me?
Yeah, and he did the other day talk about wanting a contract with Kick. Oh, I'm coming over to Kick, get me a contract. He's trying to put pressure on Rumble so he can have long-term sustainable money.
But even though both the boomers and some Gen Xers and a lot of people and everybody on the left doesn't still fully grasp or understand Nick Fuentes, I do think he's going to continue to get bigger.
Oh, yeah.
Especially because we are seeing him in more mainstream formats, and we're also seeing more people, his toning down his rhetoric a little bit, but we're seeing more and more people also say, oh, well, I agree with him on this, or he was right about Candace, or he was right about that, and gaining new subscribers and new following, and going into the midterms and then 2028. Again, he does have that outsized influence, especially on an America First versus MAGA fight, then I think he's going to be a lot more important than a lot of people are giving him credit for.
Well, again, he came from,
like it or not.
Again, he was banned for so long. He had to be extremely edgy even to survive for as long as he did and capture an audience. I think when he was looking at, especially James Fishback is really walking that tightrope better than anybody else in the America First movement right now. He has mainstream appeal while still having America First morals, values, and appeal to that edge audience, even better than Fuentes. I think as time goes on, we're going to see Fuentes really become a lot more like Fishback and a lot less like the edgelord that he used to be.
But we're also seeing and talking about Rumble and having to bring in people that might be censored, canceled by their own governments or by people or for opinions that they might have. We also saw Eva Lardingerbroek, if I'm saying her name correctly, speak again about censorship that she's
And I brought this article up specifically to talk about if Rumble does offer Fuentes a contract, as these content content creators get banned in the EU, in the UK, they can easily pick them up for very cheap. So it would be a good strategy to just start picking up small content creators that are getting banned. And it would really look good on Rumble to do that.
We might have to get picked up because Mexico is also bringing in a law regarding audience rights. That's what they're saying. That's what they're calling it. But it's essentially to censor people. And they're saying if you don't respect audiences' rights by giving the information that we think is pertinent and that we think you should be giving out, then we can go after you and censor you. And they've already tried it with someone that
if
a far-right candidate here.
If audiences feel offended, they're allowed to go after the content creator by reporting them to the government, which seems absolutely ridiculous.
But again, we're seeing it everywhere. And Eva Vlardingerbroek, I hope I'm saying her name right, says, "Holy S, I've been banned from traveling to the UK. They revoked my ETA, or it's a permission to travel. Your presence in the UK is now considered to be conducive to the public good." So again, similar to Mexico, there's audience rights 3 days after posting this about Starmer. So it says you cannot appeal this decision. And what she had posted before is, and I'm just going to read quickly, here Starmer wants to crack down on X under the pretense of women's safety, whilst he's the one allowing the ongoing R-wording and ending of British girls by migrant grape gangs. Evil, despicable man. And then she gets this notice. So it is pretty much obvious it's connected.
And she is a very young, good-looking, not only content creator, but in politics and activism as well. So if Rumble was to give these people small contracts that they could guarantee her voice would continue to be heard even when these nations are banning her. If she ever did run for government in one office, this Rumble would hold a lot of sway with her, and it would be a great thing. And she's not just one example of this. There's a lot of people in the EU and the UK especially. Tommy Robinson is another one of these. Now, he gets a little bit of protection from Rebel News in Canada, as he signed with them. But
and again, she is, aside from being like incredibly intelligent and incredibly well spoken, she fought for farmers' rights in Netherlands, over there.
Denmark, I believe.
Denmark, somewhere where it's cold and there's sheep. But she has been at this for a long time and has been an influential voice. And this isn't the first time that she's gotten a message from either the government or Apple. We also reported when she got a message from Apple saying, "Oh, it appears that your phone is being tracked by a government or governments and that they're deep within your phone." And Apple had to inform her of this. But it is, and now I believe she has a kid, but it is crazy that she's having to go through all of this just because she's speaking out common sense things that a lot of other people are also speaking out about.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into the next story here.
And this is more your story because you're into more the debate sphere.
Well, and I talked about this a little bit the other day. I wanted to kind of bring a clip up of this, and it's a shame Pearl Davis did so horrible on this event, and it's
a shame they had her.
It's so bad that this event just went as bad as it did. They had audio issues. It didn't come off good online as a live event. There was a series of things I didn't like about the event, and I was really hyped about this event. I thought this might bring debate into the mainstream. It looks like at best we can hope these people are going to learn from their mistakes and try again with better formatting.
And just from what I'm looking at here on the kind of thumbnail, it looks not very professional.
But a lot of the promos, a lot of the money they put into the hosts, like the money was allocated in the wrong direction, and it just did not work for an online format. And I think the majority of their viewers or their reach is a lot more online, and they had trouble selling in-person tickets as well. And Andrew Wilson was one of the big organizers of this. I really like Andrew Wilson. That's why I was kind of supporting this all the way through. But I have to be honest about it. Hopefully he learned from this, and the next time out, it will be better.
Micah says, "This is embarrassing. Pearl Davis had a debate with Anna Kasparian on the left, or more on the left, and despite days of preparation, completely froze under even mild pressure."
Are you just making things up? Pearl, what are you doing? Like, seriously. The next question.
She's completely frozen.
How many women die every year during childbirth?
Not many.
This country has the highest maternal mortality rate of any developed country. So a lot of women do die as a result of pregnancy and childbirth, yes.
Was that actually?
Yes.
Pearl isn't saying anything.
And the whole debate went like this. Anna
Agreed.
Kasparian would often, like, Pearl Davis would say something and then she would ask for her reference or her statistics or where she got that information. And she would constantly say, well, I don't need references. I don't need statistics. She was completely unprepared. She does a little bit of debate. I understand she wasn't good. She's not that good at it, but man, she completely froze. And I expected more from her. The live audience
Really? I don't.
The live audiences was completely on Pearl Davis's side. By the end of this, everybody really realized Anna Kasparian absolutely destroyed her here.
And there's calibers to people, in my opinion. And I mean, again, Pearl could get better, could train, could get smarter, could read more, but she hasn't wanted to, and she's had a very easy time getting to the top. Then she kind of fell down a bit, but now I think she's going to continue to fall.
Yeah, I think
Because you have to hone your craft. You have to actually know what you're doing, how to do it, and actually.
She has a big audience, and she does it on a regular basis, and she does do like debates, but debates she's kind of in control of, and she brings people that are below her. She should have done debates online before with people that were better than her, or at least in private. So she could have prepared for this thing, because man, she really crashed and burned on this thing. And the thing about that is that was the main event of World War debate, which was kind of a shame because there was talks of Fuentes or Crowder or even a Candace Owens. And I think that would have brought, number one, a lot more eyes. But after that performance by Pearl Davis, I mean, it did not go well, especially as a final event.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we can kind of move on now.
Moving on to, and we talked about Elon on the last stream on Monday, I believe it was. But now they're having, a lot of governments and people are having trouble realizing that he might not be the terrible threat they think he is. Well, he is, but in a different sense. Basil the Great says, Kate Hoey asks a UK government minister to thank Elon Musk for getting Starlink into Iran. The minister says she's thrilled Starlink is in Iran, but she says she won't thank Elon Musk. They'll take Elon's products, but won't credit him for making them.
Yeah, and this is hypocrisy just on so many levels. The UK government wants to ban X, but they want to use Starlink and push X into other countries that don't want X in there. Do they not see a parallel between the two things? I mean, let's watch the clip and then we'll talk more about it, I guess.
The world. We saw the very appalling pictures of the security guards displaying the bodies, thanks to the work of very brave Iranians getting the message out before all of this social media was locked down. But does she agree with me that social media has shown its importance in the first 2 weeks of these protests? And would she congratulate Elon Musk in now being able to get Starlink into Iran so that some opportunity will be given for Iranians to get their message out?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think she's right about this because we've been unable to gain access for journalists. Citizen journalism has become all that we have. And actually, the reports that have been able to be shared have been vital in alerting the world to what is going on. And I think that can be said for very many of these sort of precarious locations and places where it's difficult to gain access. The extent to which I'm prepared to stand here and thank Elon Musk for anything, I think is a different question. But I do agree with her about the vital role that social media has played.
The vital role that social media is playing in not only Iran, but in the UK and the EU, even to more of an extent. The fact that she's willing to admit that, but still wanting to ban it in her own country.
That's why they want to ban it. They're not, either they realize what they're doing or they have no idea what they're actually saying. But it's the fact that she's not realizing that she is so scared and upset, and they want to ban social media and you want to control it, and they want to put barriers to it and to free speech. In the UK specifically, they're already arresting multiple people for just posting things online or even reposting things online. The fact that they're not realizing that, yes, they cannot thank Elon Musk or say that being able to get these images out of Iran is great from a revolution that they're having against the government. Because that's exactly why they want to censor it. That's exactly why they're so upset and so afraid of social media and of free speech and of open dialogue and of images and information getting out there that they cannot control, which is why they want to control it.
Well, it's going to be interesting because I think Iran was a little bit of a test run. How they're getting the internet into Iran is actually through Starlink devices on the ground that are being smuggled into the country. But with mass censorship kind of rising up around the world through hate speech laws in the EU, in the UK, in Canada, Australia, Musk is very likely to release a cell phone. If these cell phones are sold, he's not going to need a wired internet that governments themselves can kind of censor. He can go direct to satellite to the phone. So it will be a completely uncensored internet, or at least more than any other internet.
But he has been talking about that, and I haven't seen or heard much progress on
well,
it.
I think it's, my guess is, I've been kind of tracking it, is it's ready behind the scenes. And if they come up with mass censorship, I think his counter move is going to be, okay, world, here's the Starlink phone. And you also have to realize Apple itself has Starlink actually in it now, so it can access Starlink. So if they
so that's like as an emergency feature.
As an emergency feature, but if that feature is expanded because they want to compete with the Starlink phone that has uncensored internet, it would be interesting. I think there's moves to be made, even if these countries bring in censorship.
Hopefully. Somebody that they always want to censor. And this story went a little bit big a few days ago, but we didn't touch on it before. From Discos TV, Trump mouths F you and gives Ford plant worker the middle finger after the worker shouts to Trump, PDF file protector.
Yeah, and I think this is a important story. Number one, keep pressure on Trump. Trump does listen to his base, and if people keep saying this to him when he goes to rallies, and he's supposed to go to rallies because the midterms are coming, and he's supposed to have rallies for the midterms, which is a little bit unusual.
And I don't think it's a good idea.
But if they start yelling PDF file at these rallies, he's very likely to take action. And this is really the Achilles heel of this administration. That's the Epstein files. So hopefully he fixes this. And it's obviously getting under his skin because this is coming not from crazy leftists. This is coming from his traditional supporters. Yeah, and we did show the statement the other day where he says, if we lose the midterms, they're going to impeach me. They're going to throw me in jail. He knows he has to win the midterms. If they start yelling PDF file at every rally he goes to, he's going to realize.
Like they were booing when the jibby jab era, and he was so proud of the jibby jabs, and then he finally got it.
He finally got it and changed the policy, brought RFK in, went to 72 jibby jabs down to 11. Very likely something similar could happen with the Epstein files.
Hopefully. But, and I do see the left and a lot of people, and even people on the right, or maybe the neocons and the Never Trumpers saying, oh, this just goes to prove that he is not diplomatic. He's not president material. How dare he do that? But at the same time, it is part of why the people elected him. And it is a different way to do things, but it's one that has either not been tried or not allowed to be tried. And we'll see where it goes at the same time. I mean, I think it's endearing to his base because his base sees him as someone that they can maybe even do that to, and 2 and 4.
Yeah, I don't think it's endearing to his base at all. I think, yeah, his actions in a normal circumstance.
No, his acting like that.
His actions normally might endear him to his base, but because it was about the Epstein files, it's completely unendearing. And I think this is going to continue to happen. And as this news story makes more headlines, I think as he starts going to rallies, he's going to realize if he wants to do rallies with thousands of people there, he's going to have to fix this Epstein file situation because it's an easy target for the crowd to kind of yell at him about.
And the midterm rallies also, funnily enough, is part of Susie Wiles's last exiting plan as to what to do with Trump. But I think he's pretty much busy, a lot busier with other things to be concerning himself with campaigning for the midterms, especially if there's already this kind of sentiment from the base and from the people going out there.
No, if he fixed the Epstein files, he needs to campaign because he needs to have the majority going into the House and the Senate. There's too many important things coming up there for him to lose to the Democrats in the midterms. And it's very likely, typically the party in power always loses to the other party. And he's only holding the vote right now by a very narrow margin.
Just Living Life. Oh, sorry. Now we're going to read your comments because we're at the end of the personality politics section. Just Living Life says, hello. Thank you for being here. Hold on. I lost my... Follow the rally's fun. Hello, Ron says, hola. Thank you for being here. And says, wait, didn't mean to send that. To send what? To send the hello. Okay. And then Ron also says, I'm highly offended by far leftists. I think everybody is.
Yeah, I think everybody is at this point. But yeah, we'll kind of leave it there.
And we're also seeing, I mean, the kinds of things they're doing and excusing and not understanding about basic rule and law and order with the protests, I mean.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a push and shove because they've gotten away with these kind of protests year after year, burning down cities, and it pushes their narrative that they want and pushes the Republicans out. Trump really needs to stand firm in Minnesota and kind of wait them out, meaning he needs to continue to do ICE raids. He needs to continue to investigate the corruption within that state. And hopefully that takes longer than these protests will. And the protests will eventually die down. And if he continues to do the hard work that is necessary in that state, it's going to be a major victory over the far left. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go into religion now.
Yes.
And we only have a couple stories there.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
So we have been kind of highly critical of the Pope at the beginning, at least, when we were kind of examining where he was coming from. I made a few videos in Spanish, but we also spoke quite a bit about it on different lives.
Well, I'm still highly critical of the Pope. He's a globalist, and even if he makes a couple statements, I'm not going to trust him except based upon his actions over a long period of time. So he's got a lot of work to do, especially over the last couple cycles of the other popes that were in there, putting in really far left globalist progressive policies. He has made a couple good statements lately, and I will highlight those statements when he does make good statements because I want to kind of let him know this is what the public wants. And it's not just our station, it's a lot of other stations that are going to play this clip.
And this is, I think, part of from the speech that we played on Monday, I think it was. But Kristen Hawkins, who is a pro-life advocate and activist, says the Pope's new remarks on abortion are exactly what America needed to hear. Stop disguising the mass ending of God's children as reproductive freedom.
Yeah, so the last clip we showed on the last show was more about Orwellian censorship he was talking about, and I was glad to hear that from him. Now he's making another statement on abortion and really clarifying his stance. I like this statement as well.
The Holy See expresses deep concern about projects aimed at financing cross-border mobility for the purpose of accessing the so-called right to safe abortion. It also considers it deplorable that public resources are allocated to suppress life rather than being invested to support mothers and families. The primary objective must remain the protection of every unborn child and the effective and concrete support of every woman so that she is able to welcome life. The Holy See expresses.
Yeah, and I would like to see a lot more pro-life centers that are willing to give financial support to maybe single pregnant mothers or pregnant mothers for diapers, for formulas, for ongoing support in the first, second, and third year of the baby's life. And show them options if they are thinking about ending the baby. Maybe you can put it up for adoption and make an easy path towards adoption.
Yeah, because adoption for the longest time, both for adoptive parents, but also for mothers wanting to give up their children for adoption, has been a pretty complicated and difficult path, especially in the US. That is why we did see a lot of adoptions going overseas and people that wanted to adopt going overseas and doing it so sometimes in not the best ways or the most legal ways either.
Well, JD Vance has been very vocal on pro-life centers and replacing Planned Parenthood centers, and I would like to see that. So.
But also, and going back to the OF thing and the OF models and the shift in maybe the direction the culture and the morality the culture might be following or not following in this case, as we aren't right now, is positive. And I do think abortion might be one of those topics where the left ends up losing quite a bit of ground by people just realizing and coming to terms with the actual reality of what abortion means, for example, but especially the ones that they were trying to pass and legislation that they have been trying to pass, like late-term abortions, not just for specific cases, but for everybody. And also, what if we can get the numbers out there and more out there about the number of abortions that are done in the country.
Yeah, as the population continues to decrease, they're really having a problem with reproduction, not in all Western countries. But if you can get the economy actually working well with the shrinking population, which is going to be hard to do, but if that happens, I think that that issue of abortion is going to completely flip. I think there's in a struggling economy, women are going to really fight for the right for abortion. But if that shifts and the economy is doing well and we have a shrinking population, I think you're going to see a shift with that, especially if America can grab onto an identity with a firm moral foundation.
Yes. But moving on to...
We have one more story in
religion. And we were seeing this in many countries, including Mexico, which has an 80% religious, 79% Catholic population, where they're trying to use hate speech to censor religion passages.
So why don't we get into the article?
Ms. Madeline says, quote, so the government has also changed the definition of hate crime within the new hate speech bill, removing religion as a protected attribute. Hate crimes are now distinguished by race, national, or ethnic origin, while Catholics and Christians and other religions apparently have been tossed out.
Where you've spoken about expressions of race, colour, and national or ethnic origin. And it says on the fourth line there, for example, those of Jewish origin would be protected by the offence. Given that Jewish people, I could convert to Judaism, how then do you suggest that you'll be protecting Jewish people of different ethnic origins under this legislation?
So for this offence, that reference draws on the Racial Discrimination Act, and it is in that context, these terms have been found to encompass Jewish people, also Sikhs, as ethno-religious groups.
Okay, so you would be satisfied that using that basis, that people chanting "Gas the Jews" or "Death to Jews," that would encompass that group of people, despite them, it might be a Ukrainian Jewish person or a person from Israel.
Yes, so we're satisfied that reference to persons or groups distinguished by race, colour, or national or ethnic origin encompasses Jewish people.
Okay, what about other religious groups? Would it protect, I'm Catholic, would it protect Catholic people?
I mentioned that I think there has been consideration that it will apply to Sikhs as also an ethno-religious group, and in other contexts it would depend on the broader range of characteristics, but being Catholic alone would not constitute race, colour, national, ethnic origin, but it might be that in certain circumstances, if there are broader other considerations that meant those individuals formed part of one of those groups, that would be covered.
What about Christians more broadly then? Would that be considered covered by this legislation? Would that group be considered protected by this legislation?
As just an entire group of Christians, that wouldn't be, but there could be particular Christian groups that might pick up those characteristics.
And when she's saying pick up
really
those,
struggling there.
Yeah, they're really trying to make specialty classes for certain groups. I really think you need to have one law across the board that everybody's treated equally under the letter of the law. Mm-hmm. And in Mexico especially, we're seeing women become a specialty class and them having so many specialty rights. They're taking rights away from other groups with increased sentencing laws and things of this nature.
Including even, for example, men who pretend to be women just to be protected under those, and some do it just to prove a point. But then we also have a lot of, for example, politicians that magically decided to transition and then they got elected because they were within the quota, and they needed to get elected because they were within the quota of how many women had to be in there. But more broadly, the fact that, number one, she struggled so much in trying to define or to say or to explain what they want to do with this legislation, but also having to attach like ethnicity and or race to religion, that's also not a good idea.
Well, and they're having a lot of trouble because why is one group qualifying for special protections and another's not? And then after you have all these specialty groups, why do you have one group of people left out because they don't hit a certain they're not a certain ethnicity or a certain religion or a certain gender? I mean, you need to have one broad law. The law should be everybody is treated the same. Sorry, I said that a little bad.
That's okay.
Okay, let's go into...
Sorry, I'm going to just read Nan's message. Nan says, I'm here listening, preparing dinner. What are you preparing? Says, great show so far. I really appreciate your perspectives. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here as well.
Yeah.
But let's move on to, what is it, health?
Yeah, health, Maha, and I added education in there now.
Oh, okay.
But the greatest danger of all would be to do nothing.
I feel like education maybe should be its own little segment, but I can make another.
But usually Maha has one or two stories I'm noticing, so I can throw education in there.
Okay, so Corey A. DeAngelis says, a former public school teacher in Washington State reveals how the system trained him to keep secrets from parents. We were changing pronouns, we were changing gender, we were hiding the information. And again, no surprise here, but it's always good to have a first-hand account of somebody saying, yeah, this happened. And again, in Washington State, which is right next to Vancouver, this is not surprising at all.
My name is Ryan DeFont. Right now, I'm currently teaching at Evergreen Christian School, and I live in Olympia, Washington. I used to work at Centennial Elementary in the Olympia School District, and I can recall several staff meetings where we were trained and showed how we can hide information from parents. Using our Skyward program was where we did our grades and attendance and information for families to access. But we had a teacher and a couple teachers actually train us on how we can input information into Skyward that was behind a wall that parents couldn't access. We were changing pronouns, we were changing gender, we were hiding that information. I think many teachers want to keep their heads down, bite their lips, bite their tongues because they want a job. We want to partner with our parents, and we want to trust them, and they want to trust us with medical stuff, with bullying. There's times where we can't disclose that information for 48 hours or more. We want to disclose if there's an issue in the building right away, but we're told we can't.
Yeah, and this is crazy. I mean, this is going on at Christian schools, and the way they're able to get the Christian schools to bend their knee is they want the government funding, because without government funding, the school wouldn't be able to exist in all likelihood.
But especially like him moving from a public school system where they were doing all of that and now being able to talk about it once he's at I mean, there are some Christian schools that don't do it and that are still kind of safe havens for both teachers, parents, and children that don't want that pushed onto them. But the more worrying part is, for how long has this been going on, number one, but number two, how far and how deep has it been already institutionalized and become systematized within the education system? Because that was that was elementary school, but it's going all the way down to kindergartens, all the way up to doctorates and postgraduate degrees.
This is a national issue and a state issue. It's the teachers' unions that are ingraining this stuff, and they're highly funded, and they're ingrained into almost every single school within the nation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on to health. From Wall Street Apes, a California NGO called Community Forward SF is running San Francisco's managed alcohol program. The NGO is supposed to provide free alcohol shots for homeless alcoholics. They've got $16 million per year for 5 years and have only served 55 clients who probably got pretty wasted. $80 million, one of these organizations in San Francisco, which is supposed to be providing free shots of alcohol to homeless alcoholics. And in 5 years, at $16 million a year, they've served 55. I mean, a bar does way better than that.
Number one, this is an absolutely crazy program to start with. How this ever got approved, I don't know. It needs to be looked at. But on top of that, the amount of corruption with it, this is the one thing you might not want to have corruption in, because you would expect people to pay close attention to such an outrageous program.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the homelessness, because he has admitted that $24 billion in homeless money over the years has disappeared and it was spent, but nobody knows what it was spent on and if it did any good. And that's what this one fascinated me, because he actually admitted it.
Yeah, well, he only admitted to $24 billion. The state legislative analyst upped it to $37 billion. And that money disappeared into the black hole of newly created nonprofits and NGOs, non-governmental organizations. And those people hired, friends and family, and the CEO was making $250 a year, and they just would spend the money as fast as humanly possible. I did an article that posted today just highlighting one of these organizations in San Francisco, which is supposed to be providing free shots of alcohol to homeless alcoholics. And in 5 years, at $16 million a year, they've served 55 clients.
No, you're making that up. Wait, this is tax money, and it buys free shots of booze to street drunks.
Yes, and it's been going on for a number of years. It was an organization that already existed, but they beefed it up during COVID, ostensibly to keep these homeless alcoholics out of emergency rooms. And it's under the we're kind of trying to reduce harm to these people. And as I said, I'm sorry, giving alcohol to alcoholics is like giving crack to crackheads and heroin to heroin addicts. It doesn't end it; it makes it worse.
And they do that.
Well, and
in
they
Vancouver,
do that,
for example.
They do that in Vancouver, and we used to live in Vancouver, so I know very well about that. And it didn't help anything. It made the city 10 times worse. What you need is rehabilitation and real help for these people. And how these programs get approved in the first place is beyond me.
And I mean, it does sound insane and crazy. I understand maybe wanting to manage, what's it called when alcoholics?
Withdrawal.
When alcoholics are suffering withdrawal. I do understand that, especially during COVID, the bad times of 2020, when people, but again, for example, in Vancouver, they left the liquor stores open, but they closed the churches. So I don't see how or why they would need to. But again, a bar would have better, like opening a bar would be a better option for them than to spend it on that. Because again, only 55 served. How many people get served in a bar nightly or over a weekend? Like way more than that.
Well, I think it's more about the corruption than the actual program, but both the things here.
But like just the idea of that program and of that being a solution is insane.
Well, I actually like the fact that there was the corruption and it was that story, because it brings a lot of national attention to when there's such a crazy story with really not just one but two aspects here of who thought this program was a good idea in the first place, and number two, where did the money go for this program?
But as someone who has been sober for now almost 10 years next month, it's beyond me. And again, harm reduction does nothing but cause further harm, not just to the person you're trying to reduce the harm to, but to the whole community in general, even those that are, well-adjusted, properly living citizens. And the best options I have seen is actually admitting you have a problem and going through everything you have to go through to get sober.
Yeah, and
especially with alcohol.
And this next clip was a little bit crazy, especially considering who it was coming from, but I kind of want to get your take on it.
Okay. Josh Masson?
No, John Metcalf.
I'm reading the title of the poster.
Oh, okay.
The name of the poster. Says, if you smoke the green
Okay,
herb...
well, we can just play the clip here.
Okay. Well, should I tell the truth on this? I need to
And this is the gentleman, the computer programmer and billionaire who created Metcalf Securities. He has a very interesting story. Did a lot of drugs when he was younger, but man, I highly recommend watching the documentary about this guy. Very interesting.
I used to sell drugs, because if you take enough drugs, the only way you can support your habit is to sell to others. So, and for many years I did. By the way, I stopped using all drugs, selling drugs, or accessing drugs a little over 30 years ago. So this is not a recent part of my history. However, I did notice that among my clients, I like the pot users the most because their lives never went anywhere. They remain customers forever. And I hate to burst your bubble, but I'll be frank with you now. If you are a marijuana smoker, I would vastly prefer you switch to heroin. And here's why. Heroin will take you down faster, and you can then pick yourself up and start your life. Because marijuana is the drug of illusion. It creates the illusion that you are thinking great thoughts and doing great things while you're sitting on the sofa growing a beard.
Yeah, and I thought that was
He's kind of creepy, but
I thought that was an interesting take. But yeah, he was manufacturing drugs in the middle of the jungle and designer drugs that have never been created. But yeah.
But I do agree with him there. And I do think that with the legalization of the green herb and even other harder drugs, but especially with that one, it is, in my opinion, more dangerous than people want to give it credit for. And it does stall, especially young people's lives, for a lot longer than they want to even admit. And I think it's been taken with too much passivity lately. I do understand it has medicinal uses. It has even medicinal uses with animals, for example, but it should be taken as that and not as just recreation. And I have the same problem again with alcohol. And then that these are the solutions that they're coming up with is also insane to me.
Also, I don't think locking people up for long periods of time because they've used reefer or anything like that is just going to clog the system up for non-violent criminals. That being said, you have to have an awareness program or some kind of propaganda program to really inform the general public that's not cringe.
But they've tried all that. I was going to say,
can't have a cringe program. And like when you're when you start locking up massive amounts of people for it, I mean, it really does clog up the system, and people come out worse than they went in.
Yep.
So I mean, I would love to hear a national conversation on this, or really debates on what the solutions for this are, because I do think it's more harmful than people give it credit for.
But how would you make a program like that not cringe? If it's the cringy people that usually make those kinds of programs and then those kinds of initiatives. So how would you make it not cringe?
You probably have addicts come in, or addicts tell their stories.
But they've already tried that, I think.
Yeah, but you have to have it go out through YouTube and stuff like that. We have new mechanisms where you can really give a voice to people that are on the street and lost their lives. There are YouTube stations like that, and I think those are actually good. But if they get wider exposure, especially for a younger audience, it could really help.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
And Nan says the special classes bit was so crazy. Which special classes?
About
religion?
Yeah, well, this is what I always say is you can't start making, anytime a nation starts making specialty classes, whether that's Islam's going to be a specialty class, or Christians are going to be a specialty class, or blacks or whites are a specialty class. This is how you bring in hate speech laws. They make a specialty class, and then they have hate speech laws come in on the back of that, where if you say something that offends that specialty class, you're now reducing what free speech actually is. That's why it's such a slippery slope. And that's why I'm also a free speech absolutist. When speech turns to actual physical crime, that's the line right there. And you can't call for somebody's death or something like that.
And it was a very distinct line that most people understood. But now, once words can be violence, and you can also respond to words with actual violence, we've lost the plot completely.
Yeah.
So I think until that, for example, isn't first understood and taken care of and talked about as a society, you can't move forward with anything else.
Well, all these countries that are really going against free speech, the only one that's really holding their ground is the United States right now, but they're bringing it in and saying, what about this circumstance, and just here and just here. And once they get that first law passed that infringes on speech, they've set the precedent, and they'll only expand it out.
But now let's talk about remigration, which a lot of these specialty classes come from, and help implement this kind of legislation.
The immigration policies in Europe are a disaster. You're destroying Europe. You're destroying the culture of Europe.
And this segment is also going to be kind of short. But with breaking news from Nick Sortor, who I don't know how he has time to continue to tweet even as he's being pummeled by far-left activists on the streets, the Trump administration has just suspended, he's a photojournalist, has just suspended visa processing for 75 countries, including Somalia, Yemen, Nigeria, and more per Fox. Great. Don't need anybody from the countries, especially if they are committing massive fraud.
Yeah, and this is going to go into another story we have in the U.S. section, which is coming up just after this section. And they're continuing to do the work in Minnesota, and I'm glad to see it.
Our visa system, okay, who you allow to visit your country should reflect the national interest. We said that from the very beginning. It was one of the directives that we got from the president. It's one of the things he ran on. And so our visa process basically is, and there are some times we'll deny people visas because of activities they've undertaken overseas. Other times it's people that have visas but are in the United States doing things that run counter to our national interests. And the law gives us the right, and in fact, I would argue the obligation to remove people like that from our country. And we're going to continue to do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, sometimes somebody comes in and says, oh, I want to come in as a student. They're here as a student, and then once they're here, they're involved in nefarious activity. We're going to remove them from the country. Maybe they're here as a researcher. Maybe they're here as I don't want to say journalist because you guys will get upset, but it could be anything. These are visitors to the country. A visa is a visitor. It's not a right. By the way, we deny visas every day all over the world. People will go to an embassy, they'll sit for an interview, and the consular officer will deny them a visa because of something that came up in the record, because of something that came up in their interview, whatever it may be. So if you have the power to deny someone a visa before they get one, you most certainly have the power to revoke it once they get one and then do something they shouldn't be doing. So there's a variety of reasons why visas are denied, but all of them are because it implicates our national interest or national security in some way.
And this used to just be common sense in any country. I mean, we just saw the UK revoke Eva Farler-Dingerbrock's visa. The girl from Denmark. So that's crazy.
No.
Oh, you haven't. I thought you were going to say something about it. But I'll continue. Again, this Mexico, every single other country reserves the right to revoke visas or to take away people that are there as alleged guests. And I continue to think, I have this thought in the back of my head every time I see the protesters in Minnesota, in Los Angeles, elsewhere, saying, oh, nobody's illegal, blah, 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 on stolen land. We want them here. And especially the women that we have continuously seen, both older but also the younger ones, going out there and wanting to, defend the defenseless and the migrants and the people that ICE is kidnapping, according to them. Do they not understand that most, if not all of them, have, orders to be deported because of something they have done? Are they not understanding that part? Do they not know it? Or are they ignoring it and being with malicious intent, wanting to defend them?
No, there's this idea, just like free speech was a fundamental principle of not only the United States, but all Western culture. And now that's being trampled all over by almost every Western country. It's the same thing with immigration. They started preaching this idea of open borders, a one world government. This was the idea, and this was what neoliberalism wanted to bring in. And a lot of people drunk the Kool-Aid on that. But for all of history before that, people understood the idea of borders and what they mean. And for the sovereignty of a country and the identity of a nation, you need strong borders. And now that Trump's bringing that back, there is a huge pushback, especially coming from the left. Mm-hmm. The left used to be the one actually preaching what borders actually mean for a long time. I've been looking back on videos like that.
Although they do defend the sovereignty of other nations that are not sovereign and taken over by dictators, but that's a different story. Also from Breitbart News, quote, House Democrat Eugene Bindman sees an irony in Iranian protesters being attacked and ended, and what we see with ICE on America's streets.
I think we all recognize that the Iranian regime is a authoritarian regime that is suppressing its people. And, I recognize that in my own family experience. We fled from a communist authoritarian regime. And we need to support the Iranian people in their struggle for freedom and independence. They're protesting largely peacefully on the streets, and they're being attacked and murdered. And I think, there's an irony, obviously, in what we see with ICE on America's streets. But just to stay focused on Iran, I think it means putting enormous pressure on the regime so they recognize that suppressing their own population through violence is not going to work. I think we all recognize that.
Okay, and I have a little bit of a different take on this, and that is, I don't think there should be a regime change within Iran. They're trying to foment that right now with this color revolution, but you're going to have something where you're going to have mass amounts of migrants come out of that country if it is unstable. And in order to stabilize that country, you're going to have to put boots on the ground. I want the United States to get out of especially the Middle East. I was willing to go along with the Venezuela thing because it was in and out. You kept the same regime in. That way, there wasn't a bunch of instability and you were able to get Maduro out. That being said, we're going to go into the Maduro case later, and it's very interesting. He may get off on that thing.
We'll see.
But if you create a regime change within Iran, it's going to create massive instability, and you're going to have massive amounts of immigrants coming out of there.
Non says, dinner tonight is somewhat boring, spaghetti with meat sauce. Well, it's more interesting than what I'm making, which is nothing. So at least you're cooking.
I made tacos earlier.
Stuff. And Non also says, we need to support our own people for their struggle against the tyrannical regime.
Yeah, and this is why
if you're in Mexico, I would agree with that.
This thing that's going on in Iran, it looks very funny. I've been saying that right from the beginning, and it definitely looks like they're trying to foment a color revolution. I think Israel would have much more to benefit from that. If they want to take control of that operation, that should be all of them. The United States needs to stay out of the Middle East. I mean, how many times do they have to go into Iraq 1, Iraq 2, Afghanistan? Now they want to go into Iran. I mean, it doesn't work out good. It turns into forever wars. They have a very specific doctrine that Trump put out about the Western Hemisphere. Maybe focus on the Western Hemisphere because countries that are destabilized around you, like Venezuela, has a huge effect on the United States. So it's a lot more justifiable in that case. Going into Iran, I just don't see a benefit, and I see a lot of negative implications there.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, let's actually move into the region or the country, the U.S. Okay.
And we always have a lot of news coming out of the U.S., so let's get right into it here.
Especially nowadays. From Oz Defender says, quote, today's meeting at the White House between Vice President J.D. Vance and a delegation of diplomats from both Denmark and Greenland, led by Danish Foreign Minister Løkke Rasmussen, has now ended, with Rasmussen seen exchanging a fist bump with the Danish ambassador to the U.S.
Yeah, and supposedly this meeting didn't go well. It was a very short meeting. I kind of put the story in there to kind of talk about what I think is going to happen at this Davos speech Trump is going to give. I think he's going to go there. He's going to give a speech, but I think it's the backroom deals that are going to have a lot more impact. Currently, the Ukraine war is going on. It looks like Trump may have a final peace deal there. I think what he's going to present to a lot of these European countries is, I have this peace deal. We're going to withdraw from this. If we withdraw from this, you can't afford to maintain this war. If you don't like that peace deal, we're willing to buy Greenland for $500 billion or $1 trillion. That war is now yours. You can fund it. You can do what you want with it. It's your region of the world. You sell us Greenland, you'll have the funding to continue that war on your own. That allows Trump to kind of pull out and also get Greenland in the process, but not leave Europe high and dry, basically giving them the money they need to continue that war for the next 3 years. They want to wait Trump out on this. They don't have the money to do it. If they get another president, they think they can engage that war and turn that thing into World War III. I think Trump wants nothing to do with that. But I think this is going to be the compromise, and I think it's going to go down at backroom deals in Davos.
And this is just them leaving?
Yeah, that's just them leaving.
Okay.
So if that Greenland deal does get done, it's going to be basically giving them $1 trillion or $500 billion, and then having them fund the Ukraine war. That way the United States kind of pull out. That's the only way Europe's going to have money to really fund that war on a long-term basis. I would rather not see that war funded, but at best, I would love to see the United States kind of pull out of there. Okay.
But then if they do take Greenland, what then? What happen? What would happen next?
They're going to set up military. They're really, a lot of people may not know what Venezuela provides, even the pressure they put on Panama and now Greenland. They're trying to control shipping lanes. I've talked about this quite a few times in the past, but the United States war-gamed a war specifically with China. They've done it over 100 times. They've lost every single time, except when one strategy was actually implemented, and that was cutting off shipping lanes around the world. When they actually implemented that strategy and war gamed it, they actually didn't even have to get into war with China. They simply cut off the shipping lanes, and they were able to kind of crash the Chinese economy. I think that's the long-term strategy. I also think Trump does want to focus on the Western Hemisphere now.
Okay.
Moving on.
From Gunther Eagleman, quote, House Republicans are moving fast to pass the second MAGA reconciliation bill. This beast bans illegals from all taxpayer welfare, ensures only citizens count for funding allocation, codifies Trump's executive orders, and delivers massive wins, 1.6 trillion in cost savings, crushes rampant fraud, incentivizes affordable housing sales, redirects cash from big insurance to you, ends marriage penalties, speeds up permitting, and slashes federal bureaucrat.
Yeah, and this is huge. You can take money away from illegal immigrants and give it back to American citizens. The benefit of tax dollars should be going into American citizens' pockets and into rebuilding America. Right now, a lot of that money is going to NGOs, illegal immigrants coming across the border, things of this nature.
Is we're listening to President Trump. Affordability, whether it's homeownership, healthcare, or energy, is so important. And our framework lays out a common sense plan where we have lots of ideas, a menu of options that now our conference can come together. We're going to have our first meeting today in the House to start discussing what can be a part of that. But I'm proud of it because Americans are watching. And Democrats spent 4 years making America unaffordable. We're going to deconstruct that, rebuild it, and it's going to be even better. But everyone can achieve that American dream when we enact our legislation.
And what's the timing on that?
Well, it's got to be quick. I mean, we have to move with a sense of urgency. The scope and the scale can't be as big as the One Big Beautiful Bill, but as many of my colleagues have said, it will be just as beautiful. So it needs to move within the next couple of months. I think of it like a 2-minute drill in football, where we're moving quickly. We're focused on affordability. We're focused on making sure that, like homeownership, we've got a provision in there, Maria, that would get rid of capital gains taxes for those who are selling maybe rental home properties to first-time homeowners. And you'd be surprised to know that the average age of a first-time home buyer right now is 41 years old. That's not the American dream. Let's push that back down into into their 20s and let families achieve that goal earlier.
But you've
Yeah, and by the time they're done paying off the house, they're just about in the ground. You need to get home ownership affordable again, and for 20-year-olds, so we can really invest in the future of the country. People, when they own homes, want to have families.
But especially with these kinds of ideas, proposals, things that could get passed before the midterms and maybe even start seeing or at least listening and hearing about the effects that these could have, that is what's actually going to benefit. The focusing too much on the Greenland and the Venezuela and the this and the that and the infighting also amongst the conservatives isn't helping for the midterms. And then and even Trump himself said it, if the Democrats do get in and end up getting a majority, then they might try to impeach him. They might try to further the quasi-civil war that's happening right now. So
yeah, but you got to stop talking about these bills you're going to do or these things you want to do and actually pass them. He needs to get the Republicans in line. They just won't vote with him, and he's having to kind of rule through executive order. Yeah, he was able to get the big, beautiful bill passed, but there was a lot of pork fat in that. He would be better off just putting each policy forward one at a time and getting mass a lot of media coverage on it so he would get credit for it and then kind of follow the program all the way through. He needs to get these things passed well before the midterms so we can feel it when the midterms come. That's what's going to get people out to the voting booths.
But according to Nick's order, something that has still continued to happen is, quote, literal busloads of illegals were just flown out of Minneapolis by DHS on a chartered 737, finally being sent back to where they came from, probably Somalia.
This was important to see coming out from the government because we know the massive protests that are kind of happening in Minnesota right now. And if he continues to kind of deport illegal aliens and focus on the corruption, and that can outlast these protests, it's going to be a major victory, and that's going to be the game plan going forward for other cities. Okay, and you can kind of leave. And you can go into the next story here.
We should deport our dog. Hold on. You ready?
Yeah. You were able to start without me.
From Sawyer Merritt, quote, U.S. Secretary of War. I do like that they changed the name for that. Pete Hegseth just announced that the Pentagon will start using XAI's Grok later this month.
Yeah,
that is weird because Grok has a lot of hallucinations and it does get a lot of things wrong. So.
This is absolutely huge. And I don't think maybe you don't know quite as much about AI. There's the public version of the services. And then there's, okay, what's the private version of the service? How much more advanced is it?
It's a lot more advanced.
How much more advanced?
But still, I'd be concerned about it.
It's up to 10 times more advanced. And if you're looking at a military grade, you're looking at probably 20 times more advanced. Now, it costs a lot more money and a lot more computing power. They don't have hallucinations when you're going into these larger models here.
They might.
That being said, the reason I actually brought up this story was to talk about this is huge for X. X needs to start bringing in income. Having huge military contracts like this allows them to compete with the other AI platforms. So contracts like this will only go out during the Trump administration. If it's a Democrat that gets in next, these contracts are going to Google.
But today, we're excited to announce the next frontier AI model company to join GenAI.mil, and that is Grok from XAI, which will go live later this month. So I want to thank you, Elon, and your incredible team for leaning forward with us on this as well. Very soon, we will have the world's leading AI models on every unclassified and classified network throughout our department. Long overdue. To further, today...
And you have to... also this kind of creepy, because, I mean, they would be gaining access to databases of users from around the world.
Yeah. I mean, any AI system that we look into is going to be creepy.
Yes, but are they all tied to the government directly? And the Department of War directly?
Every single AI company is tied directly to the government because of the amount of investment that's needed and the implications of it. Well, that's what AI is at this point. It's run by governments around the world.
I don't know.
Whether it's the Chinese government or I don't like AI to begin with, but
that too. I mean, I'm completely against AI.
Yeah, but if you're going to have AI, you're going to have, or whatever you're going to have, Elon Musk also runs X. He runs Starlink. He's at least standing up for free speech. So at least they're pushing back against a lot of these countries that do want to take away free speech and bring in more authoritarianism. Now, I don't like a lot of the implications of technology in general, not just AI. I would say I'm more anti-technology than I am pro-technology.
Yes.
Okay.
Moving on from Gunther Eagleman, quote, Senate just blocked the House passed bill handing tens of billions to big insurance for 3 more years under Obamacare. 17 House Republicans betrayed Trump to push it forward, but it would have been vetoed anyway. Awesome. Abolish Obamacare.
The Senate proceed to its immediate consideration, that the bill be considered, read 3 times and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from Idaho.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. My colleague's proposal offers nothing new.
Okay, you can stop it there. And it's good to see this got blocked. The big issue they're going to have is they're not offering an alternative. The alternative that they're offering is really bogged down in negotiations. Trump wants to give the healthcare money directly to individuals in bank accounts they can only spend on healthcare, whether it's going directly to a doctor or choosing their own insurance company. I like that. The problem is they're so far away in their negotiations, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to get that passed. In the end, I think this Obamacare thing is going to pass. A lot of money is going to go to illegal immigrants and other things. There's a lot of pork within that bill, a lot of corruption within that bill. There always has been. I would like to see something else come out. I think for something else like what Trump is proposing of giving the money directly to citizens, that would have to be after the midterms, and the Republicans are going to have to win in the midterms to make that a reality.
But they would need something kind of like that to even win it.
Yeah, but at least at this point, they didn't approve the Obamacare funding, because if they approved it, it's already approved for the next 3 years, and you can't bring in direct to citizen funding of Medicare.
From Wall Street Apes, quote, Department of Justice Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon says she went after Antifa writers who beat journalists on camera at protests. Each of them showed up in court after I sued them with their own lawyers paid for by George Soros.
Yeah, and it's important.
I do like Harmeet Dillon.
Well, it's important. Number one, they're going after these people that are at these protests that are actually committing violence, things like this. It sends a message. Number two, it's important to realize who these people are showing up in court with. These are funded attorneys by George Soros. We've seen Kamala Harris have a bail fund for a lot of these rioters that were going to jail. So
the first case that we took on was the case of Andy Ngo, the journalist in Portland, Oregon, and he was exposing the Antifa violence happening in that city. Andy was attacked on 2 different instances by gangs of these Antifa thugs for doing journalism. They recognized him, they violently attacked him, and when I saw him assaulted, I reached out to him, so we're gonna go after them and sue them for attacking you. But we wanted to send the message that it wasn't going to be free to just attack journalists in the United States. Poor Andy was, beaten twice and suffered significantly from that. Each of them showed up in court after I sued them with their own lawyers paid for by Soros-funded, Tides Foundation-funded nonprofits. And so there's a whole edifice of nonprofits on the left that pays for these violent thugs to do what they do with impunity. The first case that we took on...
And it just seemed like the U.S. government has started to try and go even further into and after the NGOs like George Soros, there's a bunch of them, but they're all kind of connected as well. And I am glad to see that there's at least something starting to be done, how far they can get, especially now that things are heating up apparently again, is still in question. But at least the exposing and the categorizing them as either domestic or foreign terrorists, because they are all over, because the networks do go deeper towards other countries as well, I think was an important step. But I still haven't seen too much of what's actually being done about the violence on the streets that we continue to see right now.
Yeah, it's one thing. We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. Obviously, they're trying to go after a lot of this corruption, whether it's USAID or other George Soros funded organizations and NGOs. This could have a major impact on the midterms if they can cut off a lot of this money. So although we might not be seeing convictions in the public eye, a lot of the money may not be flowing the way it normally would into an election. So it could have a huge impact there. And I think after the midterms, if they're successful in the midterms, we'll see a lot more convictions, at least on the front when it comes to George Soros and these NGOs.
Somebody else they could go after, and they should go after. And we kind of skipped over this story when it originally broke, but from Eric Doherty says, quote, the House Oversight Committee is now moving to hold Bill Clinton in contempt of Congress after he refused to testify in the Epstein investigation.
Yeah.
Says we will move to hold Clinton in contempt.
And this story was actually from yesterday. There's a new wrinkle to this story, and that is they not only got Bill Clinton, they now have Hillary Clinton. She is also refusing to testify. If we remember what happened to Steve Bannon, he refused to testify, and he did do time in jail. I think, or hopefully, both Bill and Hillary Clinton will do a short amount of time in jail. I wish it was longer, but I'm going to go by how much time Steve Bannon got. And it's
I don't even think they'd do any time in jail
well,
right now.
Bill Clinton might not because he's a former president, so he does get some immunity for a lot of the actions that he took. But Hillary Clinton, I definitely think so, especially if they were able to lock up Steve Bannon. The problem with this is I much would have rather had them testify because they could have got them to perjure themselves or implicate other people. If Hillary Clinton ends up doing 6 or 8 months in jail, man, I think she's getting off easy in that case.
Yes, both of them.
Unanimously by the committee in a bipartisan manner, we will move next week in the House Oversight Committee markup to hold former President Clinton in contempt of Congress. So with that, be happy to answer any questions real quick. Anybody on the committee? Well, President Trump has answered thousands of questions about Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, I would say today, well, you all ask him questions every day. He answers questions every day about Epstein. Well, you can't bring in a current president of the United States, and you all know that. So, but President Trump has answered thousands of questions about Epstein. I bet today, at some point, some of you all will ask President Trump questions about Epstein. He answers those questions. To my knowledge, former President Clinton has never answered questions about Epstein, and we just had questions because, again, I think anyone would.
Okay, and that's good. And this is one of those convictions that will be easy to get because the precedent has been set with Steve Bannon. If you refuse to testify, you're going to get probably at least a year in jail or at least 6 months. So hopefully with Hillary Clinton, they're able to get that. Like I said, with Bill Clinton, I think he has certain presidential immunity, which Trump had as well. So it's going to be harder to get Bill than it is Hillary. But yeah.
Get them both, but I mean, I'd rather see them go to jail for a lot longer, but as a strategy, this could actually work a lot more in their favor, and they could even victimize themselves, make themselves a victim. Oh, they're coming after us. They're trying to throw us in jail. We told you they would. This is...
Well, if they can throw Hillary in jail, it sets the precedent for everybody else they call to kind of testify. They need to get people to either testify and perjure themselves or testify and get new information. The best way to do that is to set an example with Hillary Clinton. If they're willing to throw her in jail, they're willing to throw anybody else they call to testify in jail too.
But we'll see. We have also been talking about this quite a bit, at least the housing market in the US and how things actually move up there. From Pete St. Ong says, quote, Trump wants to stop Wall Street from buying up millions of homes using cheap capital the rest of us don't get. And
I always talk about, I believe only citizens should be able to buy property within a country, whether it's Mexico or the United States or Canada. Foreign investment really drives up property values, and I think driving up property values isn't a good thing. I don't want to have speculation and investment in home ownership. I want to be a cheap place where citizens can actually buy property and have a sense of security.
Last week, Donald Trump announced he will ban Wall Street institutional investors who buy up homes and rent them back to Americans. Will Americans own something and be happy? Now, Trump's goal is to lower house prices by preventing Wall Street outbidding the rest of us with the cheap capital they get, but we do not. It's something a lot of Americans have been wanting, from the MAGA base to the Bernie bros. So homeownership is good because it promotes starting families, it promotes community involvement, and it lets people build a nest egg. A recent study found the average net worth of an American homeowner is about $400,000. The average net worth of a renter is $10,000, $10,000 being a pretty thin retirement. The problem, of course, is Americans cannot afford houses that skyrocketed 40% under Biden. Toss in Fed rate hikes that doubled mortgage rates, and according to Bankrate, the median monthly mortgage went from $1,200 a month in 2019 to $2,200 a month last year, with rents along for the ride since landlords too have mortgages. Meanwhile, wages for 20-somethings, prime family age, actually went down under Biden and have only partway recovered. This all put institutional investors in the spotlight who've been quietly hoovering up millions of homes to rent. That accelerated dramatically during COVID's low interest rates. At one point, institutions were buying 1 in 4 single-family homes. Now, banning institutions will lower prices, but not by much since they only own a couple percent of houses. So you might get a 5% drop in home prices, maybe closer to 10% in Sunbelt cities where institutions are most active. But this comes with a roughly equal rise in rents since Blackstone will be out of the rental business. So slightly cheaper houses, slightly higher rent. Both nudge people into owning at the expense of people with crap credit or no down payment. Moreover, we're talking 5% tops here when houses went up 40% and housing costs doubled. So buyers need a lot more. Now, Trump's been trying everything. He did an EO to reduce closing costs, simplify building codes, removing tariffs on construction materials, tax incentives for builders, even 50-year mortgages, and opening federal land to housing. Just last week, he deployed $200 billion from Fannie Mae to lower mortgage rates. And of course, deportations, which have opened up over 1 million houses and are finally lowering rents, especially in deportation-heavy cities like Austin. What's missing is the two biggest drivers of house inflation, which is inflation, driven by federal deficits, and mass deregulation in home building, including environmental mandates, zoning, and rent control. The National Association of Home Builders estimates can add $94,000 to the cost of a home. For these, he needs Congress, along with local governments like New York or San Francisco, where rent control has left over 100,000 empty units, despite nosebleed rents that just delivered New York to Comrade Mamdani. So it's next brought to you by I Trust Capital.
Okay. And he's done everything he can do through an executive order. He really needs Congress at this point. He's going to need those midterms in order to really build a legacy that's going to affect Americans for generations here. And
I would also love to see this also applied to, for example, farmland, which is also pretty worrying, especially for the foreign buyers that for some reason are buying up farmland, and some of it very close to military base.
In this case, he's trying to stop corporations, but he should also stop foreign buyers. That would be huge. Now, both foreign buyers and corporations buy up massive amounts of Canadian land. This has a huge impact in Canada, especially foreign buyers. They just want to put their money somewhere other than a foreign bank because they don't want to have their money taken by their home country. Mm-hmm. So they need a hard asset. And this is what drove up home prices in Canada. I think less so in the United States, but still it's a good policy to have. No foreign buyers. If you're not a citizen, you can't own land in the country.
What if you become a citizen? Then yes.
Then yeah, okay. If you become a citizen, you can. But I also think holding dual residency as well, I think we're going to see that cut down as time goes on here and we hit the 2030s.
But also with what's happening in not just the US, but the UK, and they have proposed some crazy laws over there that we have spoken about, is, I mean, a lot of the boomers that are right now sitting and on prime real estate and holding on to it and not wanting their prices to go down will eventually just no longer be with us. And what's going to happen to those overly inflated prices from their not wanting to move out and not wanting to sell? And with also then the incoming generation being a lot less people that then have to fill a lot more houses that were hoarded by boomers.
Yeah.
And even older people, older, like the millennials and then the Gen Zs, they will be older home owners. I mean, the price will go down, but how does that impact the economy too?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are going to inherit houses, which is a good thing there, but a lot of these people did not have kids, so it's going to be interesting kind of what happens there. There's also reverse financing of homes. A lot of people that don't have kids reverse finance their homes, so they get one lump sum and they get a monthly income every month for somebody that's buying the home back off of them, usually the bank or something like that. Or the financing company.
But yeah, I think it's going to be a mess of things that people just did not fully plan for or add up all the consequences of very different actions and also policies. Like, for example, the population collapse that will have a giant outsized impact on things like this. But speaking of, from Eric Doherty says, quote, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent predicts the U.S. Supreme Court will uphold President Trump's sweeping tariffs after activist judges struck them down.
Yeah, and I've already kind of played this clip before. I wanted to bring it up because despite what it says here, the betting markets are saying 70% the Supreme Court is not going to approve Trump's tariff policies, meaning they're going to rule against it. And they'll probably have to give that money back either 6 or 12. He'll have 6 or 12 months to do that. A lot of constitutional attorneys that are very much in the know and very much in the know when it comes to the Trump administration are saying 95% chance this thing gets knocked down. There are also rumors that there are poison pills within the Trump administration that are pressuring them to go into Iran, saying that that will help out with the Supreme Court somehow coming back on this tariff ruling, which I think is absolutely insane. It doesn't look like this is going to come back. The Trump administration is trying to prepare a plan B right now. That plan B is something that he would have legal authority to do, and that is one tariff across the board to all countries. That tariff price would be 20% on all countries. Supposedly, that's what's being floated. In return for that, they would take off all income tax on citizens in the country. It would be very popular. It would be very hard for a lot of politicians to vote against as well. Okay, you can play it again. I actually think the opposite is going to happen on this.
Appeals court decision ruling most of the administration tariffs illegal. Bessent argues the massive U.S. trade deficit is an emergency and says the Supreme Court will see it that way too.
We think we're going to win at the Supreme Court. We are close to a tipping point where we could have financial instability due to these large and persistent trade deficits. So we are trying to head off a crisis.
Following last week's appeals.
Okay, and that being said, this is coming in within the next couple months, either January, February, or March at the latest. This would be an absolute dagger before the midterms. I really hope they actually rule on Trump's side. It's very, very unlikely at this point that they are. And that's kind of why we're reporting on this today, just to kind of prepare people that it's not expected to go through. The administration is already creating backup plans. There's multiple backup plans, such as the filibuster. They might want to get rid of the filibuster, but if they do get rid of the filibuster and then they lose the midterms, that's going to be absolutely devastating because the Democrats would be able to not only block anything that they want to, they would most likely be able to impeach Donald Trump at that point.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of Donald Trump's success rides on the back of tariffs actually working, because his new idea for how a capitalist economy in the U.S. could work does rely a lot on the tariffs. So it would crumble everything to the ground.
Everything's kind of interlinked. I don't think it would crumble it to the ground. I don't think it had as much impact as they thought it would have.
But a lot of people would still be very disappointed that, for example, the prices and their average life didn't get as cheap as they would promised it would.
Yeah, but it might actually have a reversed effect because of the tariff. If the tariffs come off all of a sudden, prices may actually have a drop. So it could have a reverse effect in the short term. But in the long term, I think tariffs are actually a good thing. In the short term, who knows?
And that could actually help with the midterms.
Yeah. And plus, it would allow Donald Trump to actually play the victim, saying they're not helping me. The GOP won't even vote with me. The Supreme Court's against me. We need the American people on our side. So it would be something to campaign upon, especially because he is going to go out and hold massive rallies across the nation leading up to the midterms. They've already stated as much.
Mm-hmm. But now let's read the comments for the U.S. section.
Oh, we have some comments. Great.
From Non says, Tucker was at an oil executive meeting at the White House, a meeting to discuss Venezuelan oil policy by a bunch of oil barons.
It's funny because Tucker was the one saying, we don't need to be going into Venezuela. Don't go in. And now he's in the room for the negotiations of what they're going to do with Venezuela. Absolutely crazy. I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, because he knows a lot of those oil barons from Qatar.
Yeah.
Trump Briggs says Trump spoke with Elizabeth Warren. I don't know regarding which one.
What do you mean, which one?
What story we were talking about?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't like Elizabeth Warren, but I'm trying to think what story it would have been. Maybe if he's still watching, let us know what he talked to her about.
What you meant about with that. Non says my golden retriever puppy started barking. Hearing your dog, sorry, says so cute. He's 8 months old and sweet as pie. Maybe we can meet your dog sometime. And golden retriever puppies are really cute too.
I'll bring her on camera.
But don't hurt her. He's going to go get Don't be gentle. Our dog has a spinal issue, which has been an issue for a long time. There she is. That's the noisemaker. You can't really see her face. That's the noisemaker.
She's tired.
The one you usually listen to barking. Okay, she wants to go back down. Okay, you're exposing her to the world. But there she is. And yeah, she's with us at the studio, but that just means she barks a lot more as well. But at least she's here.
She usually sleeps through the show pretty well, so she was really tired when I woke her up there. Although at the beginning of the show, she barks and then she tires herself out and goes to sleep.
Yes. But so cute, and I wish I could see it. See the 8-month-old puppy. Non also says Hexeth is the worst speaker. Yeah, he's not good at it.
Yeah, he's there because I think he's a loyalist, and they have big plans for the Western Hemisphere.
And he doesn't know.
Huh?
He does have experience as well, but
he has experience, but not as much as a lot of people. So.
And then
But I would say he is a loyalist, and it's good to have people you can trust, especially when it comes to military context, because in the first administration, he was completely betrayed by the military apparatus.
Mm-hmm. Non also says about Hillary and Bill, lock him up. Yes, lock up the Clinton.
Yeah, lock him up, and they need that.
But I don't think it's going to.
They need to publicly lock him up. So even if it's only going to be for 4 months, that's what you need. Because one of the other Achilles heels, other than the Epstein files, is they're not going after people. They're not trying to drain the swamp. They're not getting convictions. They said they were going to get convictions. Both Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Bongino promised this, and especially Pam Bondi has done exactly the opposite. Kash Patel has just been completely incompetent at this point.
Non says, I'm Gen X. I built my first and second home. Wow. Now I live in the third house. I was lucky to be working my A off during the 90s and 2000s.
Well, and I will say this to people that live in the States, and they don't realize it. Home prices in the United States are a lot cheaper than a lot of other countries. If you look at Canada, literally home ownership is not even a dream for most people anymore. In the United States, as high as house prices are, they're a hell of a lot cheaper than they are in other places.
Yeah. Again, go follow Millennial Moron. That's his name on YouTube. He compares Canadian ugly house prices, like ugly houses and how expensive they are, versus European castles or islands. You can buy a whole private island for what a 2-bedroom house in Vancouver costs you, which is insane. But there is a reason, and you were shocked when you discovered kind of what the reason is behind and how much the actual price of houses would be in Canada if we didn't have the mess that we have right now. But yes, we moved to Mexico because of the government, etc., but also partly because I knew and you knew we could not have a life there.
Yeah.
Or the kind of life that we wanted, envisioned, because it's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same goes for Europe, the UK, Australia. I mean, home prices are crazy. Actually, when people that live in Canada and the EU look at home prices in the United States, they are absolutely shocked, like how cheap they are. And I know that doesn't sound proper to Americans. They think house prices are high compared to what they used to be in the States when I was a kid, because I grew up in the States for quite a while as well. They were a lot cheaper, and they are a lot higher now, but in comparison, they're not, especially with the wages. The wages in the States are much higher than these other countries as well. If you look at the same job in Washington State compared to Vancouver, it's literally half the amount in Vancouver, and the home price can be 3 to 4 times higher. Okay.
Yes. And Non says, yay, about seeing her. She was very sleepy.
She was very tired, yeah.
And Non says, I'm sad for the kids coming up in this economy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's I mean, it is not fully, but I do blame the boomers and that generation quite a bit more now when they're all actually complaining about the things that are trying to be done to mitigate the disaster that we've been put in.
Yeah, and one of the big things
globally.
Is immigration. It drives down wages. Like if you solve the immigration problem, that is a big key component. Another key component is they need to rethink capitalism. It can no longer be a pyramid scheme where it constantly has to keep growing. We have a declining population now. You're going to have to figure out an internalized economy, maybe not based upon GDP, where people actually get to own homes, have good lives, and can afford this on one income. meaning.
But that doesn't mean get rid of capitalism.
No.
Just rethink it.
It needs to be, capitalism worked because it was always growing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with the shrinking population, and it's not quite shrinking yet, but the decline is coming, they need to rethink how it's actually going to work. And maybe it's not all based around GDP. And the economy is much more focused on benefiting the government than it is the actual citizens.
Yes. But speaking of a place that perfectly exemplifies that, Canadialand. I don't respect it, so I call it Canadialand. Let's start with the first story. From Table Salt, quote, Canadian opposition member of parliament reveals that Prime Minister Carney has quietly given his ministers the power to exempt any corporation for almost any Canadian law.
Yeah, and this scandal came out maybe about a month ago. I've talked about this a few times. Hopefully he explains it a little bit better, but people in other countries should pay attention to what the Canadians tried to sneak in one of their bills, and they could exempt any corporation, and I believe politicians were in there as well, which is absolutely insane. This would absolutely allow politicians to line their pockets.
You won't believe what Mark Carney tried to hide from Canadians. Buried within Carney's massive 700-page budget bill is a measure that gives cabinet ministers wide discretion to exempt any entity from any federal law on the books, except the criminal code, for up to 6 years. So what this means is that any minister in Mark Carney's government could give any individual or corporation the ability to bypass virtually any federal law. The scope that a minister would have to exempt an individual or corporation from federal laws is extremely broad. The minister only needs to claim that an exemption would encourage innovation, competitiveness, or economic growth, and is in the public interest. That could mean just about anything. So take a big corporation bidding on a federal project. Under these powers, if the minister determined that the project would facilitate jobs and economic growth, the minister could decide, for example, to exempt the corporation from the federal government's procurement and contracting rules and award a sole source contract to that corporation, bypassing the bidding process. What sorts of situations could that be? Well, it could mean that Brookfield could be exempted from complying with Lobbying Act, from having to report all the times that they're lobbying. It's pretty obvious that the exercise of these wide powers could open the floodgates to all kinds of conflicts of interest and corruption. And to top it off, a minister would have wide discretion to keep the public in the dark about having granted an exemption. A minister could hide the scope, the particulars, and even the name of the individual or corporation that the exemption was granted to if the minister determined that it was in the interest of protecting so-called confidential or personal information. So not only will ministers have wide and unprecedented power to exempt individuals and corporations of laws and regulations without any checks and balances, they also have wide discretion to do it secretly, behind closed doors, without any level of transparency. And speaking of a lack of transparency, there has been absolutely no
you can leave it there. And I just wanted to kind of bring this up, not just in the context of Canada, but other countries doing similar types of legislation in the EU and the UK.
But also, especially with Canada, we have seen, because of the overregulation and because of some quote unquote sanctions, not really, but sanctions that the Canadian government puts upon enterprise and upon corporations, except for Brookfield and their own corporations, we have seen a lot of flight, and we've seen them running away to the US, where they actually do have the opportunities to, as corporations, behave the way they should to actually, generate profit.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go into the next.
So I think that's why they want to do the exemption, because they want to be like, no, please stay. We'll let you do anything.
Yeah. As of right now, I think it got knocked down. The issue is they're going to try to sneak it back in there in some way, shape, or form. That's what the Canadian government is famous for. They create these big bills and then shove things in there. And then when they don't pass, or they're kind of outed on their corruption, they just make another huge bill and hopefully nobody sees it.
The next time. But also from Natasha Montreal, quote, Canada wasn't always like this. There are now encampments across Montreal and throughout the country. Zombie people stagger out to beg at traffic lights. People sleep in their cars. Every day we become a little more like the third world.
Yeah, and we can play this clip, but there's enough money within Canada. Canada is giving away billions of dollars, not only to Ukraine, but to other causes all around the world. If they just kept that money at home, there wouldn't be a homeless issue. They have a very small population, so a few $1 billion goes a long, long way in Canada. It's not like the United States, where you have over 300 million people. You have less than 40 million people, or right around 40 million people in Canada. Okay, and you can stop it there. And sometimes I'm iffy about showing clips like this because, oh, is this actually going on or is this not going on? In Canada, it's definitely happening because we used to live in Vancouver and there was a homeless encampment less than a block from where we
have
lived.
a video we filmed at it on our Spanish, now Spanish channel, but as another reason why at least myself left Canada is because coming from Mexico City and Mexico being always touted as so dangerous, I felt less safe living in Vancouver, walking down the streets at night in Vancouver, especially towards the end, right before we left, than I ever did in Mexico or do now in Mexico.
Yeah,
which is insane.
And as a man, especially that I taught jiu-jitsu and things like that, I didn't feel unsafe in Vancouver. That being said, I could understand how a woman definitely did. And you had quite a few incidents happen to you from mainly it's people that should be in mental institutions that are just completely unstable. They're not assaulting you to rob you. They're assaulting you because they're literally crazy. They'll spit in your face. They'll pull out a knife, a machete.
I've had a guy spit at me and then the guy wasn't there, so I didn't know what to do. I've had people follow me for quite a few blocks. People yell at me crazy things. People try to come at me with their bikes to steal my bag. You were there that time and did kind of tell him stop. But either way, the Starbucks I used to go to right before work, I was on my way to work, a person got stabbed there and people just stood there filming it and he got stabbed in front of his little kid. Like, that is the level of insanity, and it's in a place where you wouldn't expect it, and it shouldn't be happening. And again, we did even go to film at an encampment, and these would show up all the time. Where at the dog park where we used to walk our dog, we at the end couldn't go there, both because she was hurt, but also because of the environment that it had fostered and festered within it.
Well, and it's one thing to have mentally unstable people that are from the country that are citizens from birth, especially when it's a stable country like Canada. It's another thing when you're bringing in immigrants from war-torn countries that have seen horrific things and they become mentally unstable and then end up on the streets. I mean, the level it can go to is just another level completely.
And if places like France, the UK, Germany, Canada continue to go down this path of just allowing this degeneracy of society and the demoralization of its own society, both by themselves, but also by importing people that just don't want to assimilate, then luckily, apparently Latin America is on a path to kind of almost take over, because we do see that a lot of the countries in Latin America have at least changed their minds and they're moving towards the right and towards a more Nayib Bukele and El Salvador model.
Well, you can look at Canada and it's pretty matured as an economy, and yeah, they can make some changes and stabilize the quality of life there. But when you're looking at Latin American countries and countries like Mexico, there's a ton of growth here and they're only at the beginning of their journey. There is a lot of optimism, and I think that's why Trump's looking towards Latin America. He realizes there's a lot of growth, and he, as an investor or somebody that is business minded, they want to get in on the ground level. Okay.
Speaking of, let's move on to Latin America. And we at least haven't seen fully if there will be, as Claudia Sheinbaum calls it, a full-out war and a threat to our sovereignty here in Mexico. But there has been some movement. And with this first one, I really like Daniel DiMartino. He's a Venezuelan. But from Fox and Friends, it says Manhattan Institute fellow Daniel DiMartino, who fled Venezuela, says that watching Nicolás Maduro face trial would be justice. Defeating tyranny with the rule of law.
Yeah, and I have a different take on this. I've been really researching this Maduro case, and it is shocking what could happen in this case.
I want whatever is best for the people of Venezuela and for the United States. And I know that what's best for all of us is for a pro-American government to take over in Venezuela. And I know that she is not. So we need to do this transition as quick as possible before Trump leaves office, because as soon as he does, the Venezuelan regime is going to betray the United States if a democratic government is not in power.
Daniel, Maduro and Celia, his wife, will go on trial here in New York City. Will you go to watch that?
I hope we are allowed, because I will line up. You know, I hate making lines. I had to make a lot of lines in Venezuela for food in my life. But I'm going to make this line no matter how long it is, because it's going to be a glorious moment of justice for all of us.
So why do you want to be there?
Because I want to see justice being done. You know, Trump could have killed Maduro. And I would have been okay with it, to be honest. But this is even better. He's enforcing the law. He's doing what's right. He's like putting him to shame, not by defeating him with more tyranny, but by defeating him with the rule of law, which is what we want.
Yeah, there's a problem with this. And if I didn't know better, I hadn't done a deep dive into this case, I would have thought like he did. I really think there's a good chance that Maduro is going to get off. There's literally 20 different in-depth reasons why this case has been completely mismanaged. If you want a deep dive on this, Robert Barnes, a constitutional attorney, was recently on the Duran, and they talked about this case in depth. They mischarged him. They undercharged him. They didn't charge him with the right things. They said he was cooperating or with terrorist organizations and cartels. The problem with that, they weren't labeled as terrorist organizations or cartels until last year when Trump got into office. And the actual charges that Maduro is getting brought up on were brought up years and years ago. So a lot of that's not going to stick. The one person they have that's currently going to testify against him works for the CIA, but was really involved in a lot of the funneling of money, the attempted color revolutions within the country, and they don't want discovery to happen, especially with that witness's name on the witness list. The discovery could absolutely destroy a lot of the deep state from the mischarging. I mean, he really went into about an hour to an hour and a half of why he thinks Maduro is possibly going to get off. And this is coming from somebody that would like to see Maduro convicted. He's a constitutional attorney. He's known very well about other cases in the past that are similar. I would say I don't have as much hope on this gentleman. And it's also the judge that's taking part in this case has TDS. He actually ruled against Trump on multiple occasions. The 4 clerks that work for him also have TDS, and they're going to have a lot of influence on this case because the older a judge gets, the more they rely on their 4 clerks. This judge happens to be 92 years old. This case is also taking place in New York State. That means all the court clerks are very, very, very liberal-minded and very likely to try to influence this case if they can. Yeah, I highly recommend watching the episode of The Duran with Robert Barnes. He goes in depth. I had no clue. The betting markets are even betting Maduro's going to get off on this point.
I mean, and I would love, and I think all Latin America would love to see him convicted. But even with the case moving forward, I think a lot of other tyrannical governments, I'm including Mexico's in that, at least are scared that something could happen and that some information could leak out, and information will leak out. Even if it goes all wrong and wonky, at least Trump has that precedent of people actually speaking up and things actually being discovered and coming out in a legal sense, hopefully.
Yeah, right now Trump has the most leverage because he went in with a successful operation, took him out, was able to leave the kind of regime intact, so there's stability in the country. The problem is a lot of other countries are freaked out right now, but if this Maduro case fails in a spectacular fashion, that takes away a lot of leverage in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally shocked when they went over what they charged him with. They charged him with the wrong things. They undercharged him. I thought this was going to be a slam dunk case, and now it's looking like it's a slam dunk the other way. And there's plenty of money coming in to fund Maduro's attorneys as well.
From people like this, countries like this. From Terrible, quote, Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, does not agree with the United States calling drug cartels terrorists, says you cannot classify organized crime as terrorism. And she also said that in our own constitution and in the rules that they themselves changed, that it wasn't classified as terrorism, but it is. She doesn't even know that part properly. But the fact that she continues to come out with these statements and with trying to defend Nicolás Maduro, defend the cartels, say that the U.S. shouldn't be classifying them that way and that there's different ways to deal with them, which they haven't applied and they haven't done, whatever their ideas are, is insane. And it is one more thing that is sinking her and making her not look good on an international stage.
Yeah, the classifications of classifying whether it's politicians or cartels as terrorist organizations was very effective in Venezuela. It could be effective here as well. That's the path they're going to kind of take. They need to connect a lot of these dots from Venezuela to Mexico so they can
And they're there.
so they can tell their base. This is on our border. It's much more appealing to the base if they have to fight cartels in Mexico rather than they have to fight cartels overseas in a far off country like Venezuela.
Is it in Spanish or?
You can play it.
Nosotros no estamos de acuerdo.
We don't agree.
Nuestra constitución y
Our
nuestras
Constitution and our
hablan de
laws
terrorismo en otro sentido.
talk about terrorism in a different sense.
Puede catalogarse como terrorismo. Terrorismo
Can't
tiene
be
que ver
qualified as
directamente
terrorism.
con acciones que tengan que ver contra el gobierno.
Terrorism has something to do with actions that go against the government or that try to do something to the government.
Dichas y otros esquemas.
And other schemes.
Entonces no está en el marco
So
de
it's
nuestra
not
legislación llamarle así.
in our
Y tampoco
legislation to
estamos
call
de
it that
acuerdo
way.
con que
And we
el
don't
Estados
agree
Unidos
with
le llame
that, the fact that the
terrorismo
US calls it
implique pues una
terrorism
intervención en nuestro
and
país.
to use
Pero
that
lo dejamos
for an
claro que
intervention in
cambiamos
our
la
country.
Constitución o agregamos a la Constitución un párrafo
We
donde
added
quedara claro que
to our
el pueblo de
Constitution
México estaba en contra de cualquier intervención.
something to make it clear that we
En
are
ese
against
momento cuando declararon a las
intervention.
organizaciones de la
Okay,
delincuencia
you can kind of leave it
Especially
there.
when they added the terrorism designation to organized crime.
Well, and you have to realize Claudia Sheinbaum is between a rock and a hard place here. She'll lose her head if she goes against the cartels. Trump is applying more and more and more pressure every day. That being said, it's only a matter of time before one of these other parties make this the main issue of the 2030 election in Mexico. And Claudia Sheinbaum is actually in the best possible position to kind of maybe cooperate with the United States, say she's taking on the cartels, fighting organized crime, and maybe not even being against all the cartels, but picking the winners and losers. So there's only one or two left. Well, they'll most likely roll up into the government and legitimize, much like what happened in Russia.
The problem is she can't. She can't fully cooperate because if she does, she will lose her party and she will lose anybody within her party that right now has the majority in all chambers of our government to support her in whatever she wants to do. Why? Because a lot of them have direct links and ties that have been discovered by the US, have also been discovered by Mexican journalists and people from the opposition parties. So she can't fully come out because of those connections, and that would completely crumble both the power, the little power that she has, but also would crumble her predecessor, AMLO.
Yeah, but there's pressure coming from the United States with these tariff deals, the tariff negotiations, other economic ties they have to the U.S. I mean, I don't know if she's going to be able to resist the pressure, because if she resists it too much, Mexico could actually absolutely crumble, and then you're going to have then you're going to have an uprising from the people themselves.
Which we,
I mean, it's a fascinating situation to see. The situation Sheinbaum's in, and although I don't like her because she's ideologically very far left, Trump has pushed her back to the middle a lot.
But she continues to praise Maduro and the regime and say that that was an illegal arrest and capture and that he's been kidnapped. And she shouldn't be making those statements, but they're coming from her boss, which is AMLO, who's still technically running the country through her.
She's in a very hard place,
Yes.
probably more than any other politician in the world, I would say.
And I
have some sympathy for her because of the position she is in.
She put herself in that position, but I've said it beforehand. With her, it's a very special case because usually here, I mean, the president that is outgoing usually picks the president that's going to be incoming. That's how it's worked for decades. But with her, I think she was picked because she was supposed to follow the orders and just be there. However, I don't know how much she actually believes everything, and I don't know how much she's just, putting up the face that she's putting up because she knows what would happen if she didn't.
There's another option as well. The other option is there have been talk about her breaking off and creating her own party. And if she does that and
She's too weak right now.
Well, but if she does that and she makes her main platform to fight cartels, fight crime, she's going to need protection from the U.S.
But she can't create her own party. She can't create her own party while she's in power.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic is what I'm saying here. Because ultimately, if she does betray the cartels, which she's been aligned with for a long time, she's going to have to go directly to the U.S. for security guarantees for her own personal protection.
Yes, both from cartels and from, politicians who are also.
Well, and also don't look at this as like it's necessarily the U.S. versus the cartel, because the U.S. also realizes they can have one cartel actually win and then roll them up into the government. So it's not necessarily about just getting rid of the cartels. It's ultimately, I think the smartest move from the U.S. would be able to support one cartel to eliminate the others.
But they're already in the government. But now let's read comments because we do have a few that
we do.
accumulated. Trent Briggs says, I'm surprised Trump has no hotels in Mexico. I actually kind of am too, but.
Well, he had one in Vancouver, and they paid a ton of money to put his name on there. And then the next year, there was mass protest outside this hotel in Vancouver, and they took down the name, had to keep paying him for the name. Then they named it something else. I mean, Trump derangement syndrome in Canada
I think it wouldn't do bad here in Mexico, actually, having a Trump hotel.
Yeah, I don't know.
Trent also says, I don't know much about the Venezuela issue, except that Ana Navarro praised Trump for it.
Yeah, I don't mind this situation. I'm against forever wars. And that's why when we brought up the Iran story earlier and they're trying to foment a color revolution in there, it's gone so wrong so many times in the Middle East, and it's such a far off country. Your interests really aren't aligned there, and it doesn't benefit your people. It can only, I think, backfire in the long run. Venezuela is much different, especially because you didn't try to get a regime change. You left the regime in there. You just took out the head of the regime. So you're able to maintain stability within the country and have a lot more influence within that country as well.
Kind of stability, at least.
Yeah, it's actually it's getting more and more unstable by the day. So there's talk that he needs to start lowering the sanctions, and he needs to do it now because they need some economic success within the country.
And Non says about Canada, even smaller cities and towns have encampments unless it has been made illegal. And yes, even in the little cute towns that are around Vancouver, they've also started to pop up.
And Canada's insane. A very interesting case study because it's not just drug addicts and crazy people in these homeless encampments. People are being so priced out of the market to either rent homes, buy homes, or even have jobs, they can't afford a home. Welfare does not provide enough money for rent if they wind up on welfare, and very often they wind up on the street at that point.
And Trent Briggs says about the judge in the Maduro case, 92. Oh my God. Yeah, I also said, oh my God, when you said 92.
Yeah, so he's 92. He has 4 court clerks. All 4 court clerks are highly ideological left because they're court clerking in the state of New York to begin with. But as the judge gets older, their court clerks actually do the majority of the work.
Well, I mean, there should be a law or something that says that past a certain age, you shouldn't be.
And the reason that judge got all these cases is because the original Maduro charges were years and years ago, and that's where they were brought. And he got the original case, so now he gets all the similar cases to it because there's a law that the same judge will handle all the cases.
But still, at that time, he would have been, what, like 80 something? Still, still not a.
Yeah, I'm just shocked that this thing could go wrong, and the left would absolutely love for it to go wrong. And it's happening in the state of New York with a judge that has TDS syndrome. They've completely mischarged Maduro at this point. Though I don't think a lot of the stuff is going to stick. The witness that they do have is going to actually expose corruption within the own U.S. government through the discovery process. I mean, this could not only backfire by Maduro going off, it could uncover mass corruption within the CIA itself. And I don't even know how the discovery process is going to work here because a lot of those documents are going to be classified.
We'll see. Non says, I had no idea it was like that anywhere in Canada. Oh, that's all, everywhere in Canada. It's encampments plus encampments. Go to, just Google on YouTube or type into the YouTube search bar, Vancouver walkthrough or just Toronto walkthrough. And it's just people walking through the streets and you'll see how it is, how it actually is. Because it's the part that never gets.
They give out free drugs. They give out free needles. They actually support the lifestyle there of people being homeless.
It's insane. Walker, hello Walker. Walker says, hello guys, any thoughts on Greenland becoming the next US state and Trump saying there was only one sled with 2 dogs there?
Yeah, I think Trump's big plan is going to be he's going to go into this Davos meeting, give his speech, but behind closed doors, he's going to say, we basically have a deal with Russia if you want to continue the war, which the EU does. So they're not going to want to have that negotiated peace. Trump's going to say, you're going to have to fund it yourself. If you want to fund it yourself, I know you don't have the money. I'll give you either $500 billion or $1 trillion for Greenland, which is more than enough money to fund the war for the next 3 years until Trump gets out of office. And ultimately, that is the EU's big plan, is to wait Trump out. The problem is they don't have enough money to fund that war themselves. If they sell Greenland, they do. Trump's going to put pressure on them by saying, we want to pull out of the war. You can take over the war if you want, and here's the money if you sell us Greenland. I honestly think that's the play, and that's why all these pressure points are coming to the surface at the same time. Both Jared Kushner and the other negotiator for the Russia-Ukraine war from the Trump administration is looking to meet Putin again. So everything's kind of lined up. That, if I had to connect the dots, I'd say that's the deal going on behind the scenes.
And there it is. Because we had mentioned it before, but Walker wasn't here yet. Oh, and we do have a lot of comments on Rumble, so I'll read those.
Oh, great.
We still can't show them on screen. I don't know why. I've been trying to work on it, and it won't work.
Yeah, and thanks for everybody that has watched us on RUMBLE. It is this free speech platform, and especially with mass censorship coming in the EU, Australia, and these other countries, I think Rumble is going to be more and more important.
And Ethel, hello Ethel, says, in Europe, housing prices are very high too, in the cities, I would say. Yes, you can buy a castle in Europe, but it's just because it's in the middle of nowhere and needs massive maintenance. And exactly, I mean, that is why people want to get rid of them, especially with shrinking family sizes, also, especially particularly in Europe. But with Millennial Moron, like the castles he shows are insane. Some of them even say that it comes with its maintenance, like already included within the price. It's insane. And they do look, a lot of them, modern, like they've been restored and it looks like a normal house.
But you have to remember, when you buy a property in a lot of these European countries, especially like France, there's all kinds of crazy tax policies. And is there going to be an inheritance tax when you want to give that house to your kid? How much tax per year do you have to pay on the property value? In the United States, if Trump gets rid of property taxes, which Florida is already trying to do, it's going to be on the next ballot. I mean, that's going to completely change the housing market within the United States. You're almost going to have to bring in laws that only citizens can own property at that point, because so many foreign investors are going to want to own property if there's no property tax.
Mm-hmm. And Ethel also says, I imagine we are entering the 30s in the 21st century, and the 30s in the 20th century had the Great Depression. Welcome back 100 years after. Not everyone will survive, huh? And I do see similarities there, and worryingly going into the 2030s, it does feel somewhat similar. But at the same time, the issues of this century and entering into the 30s are a bit different as well, because, well, I mean, the population wasn't as big back then, but it wasn't as impactful, the population collapse that happened afterward, that I think, as I think the one that we're entering into now will be.
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. It could go any number of ways right now, depending kind of who wins these political battles. Trump's got an idea with tariffs and recreating the economy, especially around the Western Hemisphere, and have China take responsibility for their section of the planet, and Russia for their section, and Europe for their section, I guess. But Europe really wants a war for the reset, and they want those Russian minerals. That was always their plan. And if you go towards a war, you're definitely going to go towards a Great Depression. Mm-hmm. I think Central and South America, there's a lot of growing room. So if the U.S. succeeds, there's a lot of room for them to grow on the U.S.'s back.
However, we are also living through a population collapse in Latin America, which the UN lied about.
Yeah, and I don't think the population collapse is necessarily absolutely devastating. How the economy works definitely needs to be rethought. It needs to focus less on the government, more on the citizens. GDP is not as important. It's important how you live inside the country. I mean, a lot of things need to be internalized, whether that's food production, water, less globalization, more nationalization, so you're self-sufficient. So when you do cooperate with other countries, it can have an added on benefit.
Mm-hmm. And Neo moved over to RUMBLE. Neo says, Europe is the worst place to buy a house now. China has silently destroyed Europe, and no one has realized it. Also, migration, both legal and illegal. But yes, I mean, China owns the UK's power grid. Like that should tell you enough about how the influence and how much they've sunk their teeth into. And also Vancouver, for example, and Australia, basically all the Commonwealth countries.
Well, the liberal ideology has really been cemented in Europe through legislation, so it's going to be very hard. They do not want to manufacture anymore. They are using less and less power, which is affecting the citizens of the country. Most people in Europe don't even have a washer and dryer in their own home.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, part of it is because it's not part of their how they live, but
part of it's also the policies of the country.
Yes. And Neo said, I noticed that the majority of my comments are censored on YouTube, so I moved here. Thank you. And also says, and I didn't know this, I don't know how we didn't pick up on this, Neo says, Legault resigned today. Francois Legault, the leader of the Québécois party.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. And then Neo said...
And they are having an election in Quebec, and it is expected...
He wasn't doing well.
Yeah, well, it's expected the Separatist Party is going to win. So if that happens, I mean... That's just another domino ready to fall. It's a lot harder to block Quebec from separating because they've already had a referendum previous, and there is that precedent. With Alberta, they're trying to block them in multiple ways, whether it's through First Nations or other things. I hope Alberta, Saskatchewan do separate. I don't think Quebec's necessarily in the best position because they take more money from the federal government than they actually give through taxes. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they can actually survive on their own, but...
And Neo says, let's make Rubio the next premier of Quebec.
And I don't like Rubio. I think he's a neocon. And he's the one pushing a lot of these forever wars. Things did work out in Venezuela so far, but as far as Iran and the Middle East, they are really pushing that right now. And I do not want to see that go any further.
And then Ethel says, that ugly Quebecois frog Legault resigned. There must be a storm coming. I just want to show his face. Hold on. There he is.
Yeah, and he was... Man, he is a climate zealot to the tits, and it's surprising because a lot of people in Quebec are not. So he was collecting big money behind the scenes and filling his pockets.
But yes, Quebec, I can't even say it. Then Ethel says, how can Maduro be charged with anything by the U.S.? Whichever crimes he committed, he did outside of the U.S., where the U.S. has no jurisdiction. It's absolutely the same as if Russia prosecuted Biden. I think they go around it because of the impacts it has had upon the U.S. And also because he did go through the U.S. for some of it.
Actually, she's right on a lot of it. And it's interesting when you start digging into it and the way they captured him. A lot of this wasn't legal, and that's why a lot of this stuff isn't going to hold up in court.
Was it legal or has no precedent?
Well, no. And the way they're trying to set the precedent is saying... that he was a terrorist and he was cooperating with terrorist organizations. The problem, that classification of a lot of these terrorist organizations within Venezuela were only made last year. These charges were actually pressed long before these organizations were even considered terrorist organizations. So there's multiple reasons this thing can fall apart.
We'll see. Ethel also says Israel should defund Sheinbaum for once. She's not following Torah by contradicting Trump. The problem is Sheinbaum is a non-practicing Jew, so that means...
Yeah, sure she is.
No. The thing is, she actually doesn't have a very good relationship with Netanyahu or with Israel, partly because of that, but partly because of other things. And at the same time, she has continuously praised the traditional religions of Mexico. So she does like...
indigenous
religious ceremonies where they burn plants and purify the Congress.
I don't know if you know anything about Israel. They push a lot of this indigenous stuff with
China also
within other countries. Yeah, they like it because it creates specialty classes. So.
And then Ethel says, Guy, you gotta have sympathy for Sheinbaum because you're an immigrant and criticizing her can get you deported. Let's praise Sheinbaum just in case. She's good. We love her. She follows Torah well.
Well, I don't praise her. I understand she is in a very tough situation, and it's going to be interesting to see which way she goes and how she negotiates this. I think she's...
No, but I think you should praise her more. Praise her. Oh, God, I really don't like her. And then Neo's laughing. But I was going to say something. There is, funnily enough, she's having her own little Obama birther moment right now because apparently there's some questions about her birth certificate and where she actually is from. That's just a little insider football. I might talk about it during my Spanish show. I don't know much about it. I've just seen that the conversation continues to flow in the direction of, oh, she might actually not even be a Mexican citizen, which means she can't be a president.
You have to remember.
I think that's the way they're trying to
You
go
better
about
be careful. There's new audience laws here in Mexico.
Oh, yeah, they're bringing in that too. We should talk about that on Friday because that is pretty concerning, especially given what we do. There's new ways to censor us and means to censor us as well. Let me see. Ethel came in saying, Nat, there's no such thing as a non-practicing Jew in a position of power. There's such a thing as a secretly practicing Jew. What I'm saying is she has openly, during her more communist revolutionary days, openly rejected Israel and Judaism, which is why it's funny that people continue to harass about that specifically.
Well, it's interesting.
Because the Jewish people are actually really angry with her here in Mexico.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at Jewish politics away from Israel, you have one section that's actually non-Zionist and against a lot of the state of Israel, where the other one is very pro-Zionist. So especially a lot of liberals are actually against a lot of what Israel is doing. So I don't know much about Scheinbaum's history, so I can't speak on it.
Again, apparently nobody does either. Nobody can, her birth certificate is false. It was falsified or something. This is all conjecture. Allegedly conjecture. She's Mexican, whatever. Let's move on to the EU and the mess that's going on over there. And here we are again. Hold on. From Basil the Great, quote, Keir Starmer defeated digital ID. Keir Starmer defeated digital ID scrap. There we go. Victory for freedom and common sense. Starmer has just announced he's abandoned all plans to implement digital ID. To everyone who stood up against it, to everyone who fought it, take a bow. Well done.
Yeah, so this was a huge victory, and this shows the people that they can win. The issue is, I'm sure it's going to come back. They're going to give it another shot in a year or 2 years. They do have a hard deadline of, I can't remember if it was 2029 or 2030. That being said, they're already bringing digital ID in other contexts for banking, for online uses and stuff like that. So they're not going to make it completely mandatory. So this is a slight victory, but they're trying to get it into other ways. So don't let your guard down here. Continue to fight the good fight.
And also coming into other countries, and I would even say including the US, with the joint nexus between Palantir, but also that guy that I don't like that bought Paramount. What's his name?
I can't remember it right now.
Okay. Him, etc. So there are plans to implement it in the US and through a national security strategy saying, well, we need it to secure the border, to make sure that there's no more illegal aliens, blah, blah, blah. That could also be a great excuse to bring in digital ID for the US and for the MAGA crowd, at least, to accept it too.
Yeah, but I think people are pushing back enough, and they are aware of psyops and different narratives that the government wants to bring in to strip freedoms from people. So I think it's still going to be a hard sell. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to do more compliant-oriented stuff, meaning if you want a bank, you're going to have a digital ID, or you want this, you're going to have a digital ID.
But also in the UK, Basil the Great says, quote, British Patriot confronts Dr. David Bull over how Reform UK is pushing Islam. Reform was supposed to be the party of British people for British people, putting our needs first.
God, and we've shown a lot over the last couple of weeks about Reform UK bringing new people into their party, having new policies. They're trying to create a big tent or a big umbrella in order to bring Muslims in here, and they're changing their fundamental policies. Also with the jibby jab, they completely flip-flopped on that now. It's very concerning. They're still the best party option that you're going to have in the UK, but man, they look like they're once they get into power, they may just fall in line like the other parties.
And I'm saying similar as to the fight between MAGA and America First, we are seeing a lot of conversation, especially online and from commentators in the UK, talking more about heritage British people and actually what does it mean to even be British. And that's not where Reform is talking about now.
Michael on the Dean, good morning.
Morning, Jez. Great show. It's Michael from Corby here. Just dropping a note in on the point of Tories defecting to Reform. Reform was supposed to be a party of British people, for the British people, putting our needs first. They've imported every Muslim from the Tory party whose only interest is the Muslim community. Therefore, Reform will be no better than the Tories or Labour, and they won't get my vote. We need a party that's going to put British people first for once. Have a great one, mate. Thank you.
Can I just make the point? They are British. So Zia is British. Layla is British. Nadeem is British. So I don't buy that in any sense. Look, the whole point is that anyone who comes to our party has to subscribe to our values. If they don't believe, and if they're not on the same page as me and Nigel and the rest of us, then they are not welcome in the party. And it's simple as that.
Michael on Nadeem, good morning.
Yeah, the concerning thing is not that that's their policy, but they're completely flipping on now that they think they consolidated one voter block. They're turning those original principles into something completely opposite. They know they need the Muslim vote for certain regions of the UK, so they're willing.
Especially with how big those regions have gotten.
They're compromising their morals, or at least what they stated that they originally were.
And the thing is, I think even that guy saying, well, they are British, blah, 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 blah. They're not maybe understanding or wanting to understand that the conversation is moving past that and into heritage British people and native British people, as they're now calling themselves. And that movement and that conversation is growing stronger and stronger as they see the few options that they had completely bend and switch to the other side.
Well, in Ireland,
similar to Nick Fuentes.
In Ireland and in the UK, this heritage citizen has a lot more leverage as an idea than it does in the US. I think it's starting to gain a little bit of legs in the US. I don't know how politically successful it's going to be. In the UK and Ireland, I think it's going to be very successful because of the amount of mass immigration, because of the grape gangs, because of the fundamental principles of who actually founded that land.
But also because they're bringing up, like one of the talking points they're bringing up, because I've listened to them try to make the point, is, well, in all the other Commonwealth nations of the British Empire, like Canada, like Australia, they do give extra support, extra laws, extra rights almost to the native population. So the First Nations in Canada, also the Aboriginal tribes in Australia, they get more protections. Why can't us, just because we're a white, quote unquote, native population, and because we were the settlers here first, why don't we get those same kind of things that the Commonwealth is deciding to give to everybody else?
This goes back to specialty
classes. That's a very uncomfortable conversation to have.
This goes back into specialty classes. And this is why the conversation of why civil rights are racist. This is a thing that's coming up. I asked you about this because I was watching a debate on this. And when people are saying civil rights are racist, they're not saying they've always been racist. They said they came to a point where we all had equal rights, but there was so much money going into these NGOs and these civil rights activist groups. They kept going and they kept giving more rights and more privileges only to certain groups, while it disadvantaged other groups, mainly white populations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not saying to undo civil rights. It's saying you need a certain equality and you don't need to push past that. And under the eyes of the law, there was a certain equality, but now specialty groups and classes are getting special privileges under the law.
Like, for example, from Basil the Great, I'm going to have to say this funny because YouTube is going to understand. Pakistani grape gangs operated in labor areas for decades, yet now, because of X, they all of a sudden claim to care about the welfare of women and girls. Labor are tyrants, and we knew that already.
Secondly, this government can't suddenly claim to care about the rights of women and girls now. Pakistani rape gangs have been operating in labour-run areas for decades. Starmer said that people only wanted an inquiry to jump on a far-right bandwagon. And the new deputy leader, Lucy Powell, had to apologise after she dismissed those victims and survivors by calling the whole thing a dog whistle.
I don't know if you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs.
No, we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah, okay.
There was a real issue.
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we? Yeah.
Oh, they care about women and girls, so they really do care. Rape gang survivors have even accused Jess Phillips of calling them liars over their concerns about the National Inquiry. I could go on. They don't seem to care about women and girls when it comes to the epidemic of rapes and sexual assaults committed by illegal immigrants. The Ethiopian illegal migrant, that one, Kabatu, assaulted a schoolgirl. These two Afghan migrants raped a schoolgirl in a park. This Sudanese man, he was an illegal again, he stabbed a migrant hotel worker to death. Again, I could go on and on and on. Why is it that the government cares more about an app that can put Sir Keir Starmer in a bikini than they do about schoolgirls being raped and abused by Pakistani men and illegal immigrants? This hypocrisy has been noticed at the very highest level of the US government. The State Department is putting out posts like this now in America. British government threatening to ban X. We are as determined to ensure women and girls are as safe online as we are to ensure they are safe in the real world. Well, then they post this. They say, well, an article accusing a Labour council leader of calling rape gang victims white trash. So they're noticing the hypocrisy. Elon Musk has now waged war with Starmer. I mean, just today he posted real fascism is arresting thousands of people for social media posts. Look, it is already illegal for people to make sexualised AI
generated images in the UK.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff was already illegal, and that's the thing. They're trying to say they're passing new laws for which they already have laws because they want to sneak things in the new laws, which is they don't want politicians being put in bikinis because they're getting humiliated because they're not in line with the population, and that's why the population is ridiculing them.
And we talked about the hypocrisy with that, but also it's further exemplified by the lawsuit that Trump has filed against the BBC, where the BBC is not looking very good. From GB News, BBC files motion to stay discovery in Trump lawsuit. The BBC is attempting to halt the evidence-gathering phase of Donald Trump's defamation suit over Panorama, hoping the case will be dismissed before trial.
Yeah, and
I don't, especially with this and with them trying to now ban X over bikinis, I don't think it's going to work the way they want it to work.
No, what's going to happen here, if I ask you what happened, you can take the headphones off for a minute.
Okay.
If I asked you what happened with the Fox News lawsuit.
Which one?
The one with Tucker. How much did they settle for?
I don't remember.
Almost $1 billion. 997 million, I think it was. Why did they settle for that?
They didn't want discovery.
They didn't want discovery. That's why this.
But I don't think Trump. That's what I'm saying. I don't think Trump is going to let them not actually go forth with.
Oh no,
he won't settle.
He'll settle because he's been settling for peanuts on the dollars for every other organization. He took a $10 million settlement.
But I'm saying
a $20 million
with
settlement.
the threat of X being banned, I don't think he will want to do that in this case.
I think he'll take $1 billion.
I don't know.
Yeah,
and I don't know if $1 billion is enough to bankrupt the BBC. I mean, it's close to it, but I mean, if it's just $1 billion, I think you should go for more.
The BBC has filed a motion to stay discovery. Now, that's a legal order to pause or halt the evidence-gathering phase in a lawsuit. And in this case, it is the American President Donald Trump's defamation lawsuit over that now famous Panorama programme. And they will attempt, the BBC, to have the case dismissed before it reaches trial. This is according to court documents that we have just seen. So that breaking news, the BBC has filed a motion to stay discovery. So that means the evidence-gathering phase in these legal cases, you have this discovery process where you both have to bring to the table the evidence that you might present were this to go to court. And the BBC has said, stop. We don't want to do that bit because we're hoping that it will get dismissed before it reaches trial. We'll bring you a little bit more of that as the evening goes on. The BBC has filed...
I mean, this could result in a slew of other cases. They're going to have a settlement just because there'll be 100 settlements if they don't settle this one. Trump has been taking very small settlements.
In the U.S.
No, yeah, but he has...
And now he's fighting with Starmer. He's doing the whole Greenland thing. He has the Ukraine thing. And now he has the UK threatening to ban X. So I think in this particular case, it's more advantageous to him to actually go through with it. Although it would distract him a little bit. But
he may take a small settlement if they back off X.
No, maybe. Maybe that could be the bargaining chip.
Yeah.
However, other people aren't so lucky. From Dries van Langehoven, the Supreme Court has just affirmed my prison sentence for hate speech memes in a private group chat 8 years ago. Haven't gotten any details yet. We'll meet with lawyers soon.
I have a good news and bad news. The bad news is that free speech is officially dead in Brussels. Today, the politically appointed Supreme Court has ignored all of the grave injustices committed against me and approved my prison sentence for racist memes in a private group chat. The good news is that 8 years of show trials, house raids, and other terror inflicted upon me by the Brussels regime has mentally prepared me to take this final big injustice on the chin and immediately get ready to hand out counterpunches. I am not backing down. There are 12 more criminal investigations and court cases for hate speech running against me, and none of them will ever stop me from fighting the Brussels regime and the Great Replacement. If you are with me until victory, share this video, show the world how the Brussels regime is killing.
And you're going to need people that are willing to continuously stand up because they believe in the principle of free speech.
And
these were private group chats. Like that's what makes this so crazy.
But also seeing that it's not just in the UK, for example, that they're jailing people for hate speech or trying to jail people for hate speech, or at least taking them to court for quote unquote hate speech. It is the worrying trend that we see even all the way here in Mexico, in Argentina, in not the US because they can't, even if they tried as much as they want to try to do that, something like that in Canada, where they're changing definitions, and there's no real definition for what hate speech even is, but under the back of the legislation of hate speech, or trying to legislate hate speech, they're going to continue to censor those voices that are most uncomfortable to the, I will say, regimes that are trying to do so. And however, it is a very nice kind of policy that might try to pass because it's to protect the, once again, classes that they make up and the individual cases where they want to actually apply it.
Okay, let's go into the next story.
Oh, that's it for the UK, although that was Brussels, but
oh, okay.
I was trying to make it somehow fit into the UK. Let's move on to Australia. And Australia, again, similar Commonwealth country, and with very similar issues that plague both Canada, the UK, and other places where
we got two stories here. We have two stories here in Australia. Let's get into the first one.
From Australian lobby group, quote, Australian Federal Police Commissioner confirms it has only just received a draft of hate speech legislation that PM Albanese says will pass next week. Which lobby group wrote the legislation? Because Australians have just 2 days to respond.
And I guess the other thing I would say, like everybody, we only got this bill, late last night. So it's really difficult for me to talk in any absolutes. In fact, it would be irresponsible for me to do that, as we're still working through the bill. And I guess the other thing...
And this was that big bill there. This is one of the biggest censorship bills, and they're doing it off the back of the shooting that came into the country. They're also passing specialty classes off of that shooting. So it's very concerning when a situation happens and then they want to pass major legislation that strips citizens of the freedoms, creates specialty classes, and then implements hate speech laws, reducing free speech. We're really seeing the rise of authoritarianism in most Western countries right now.
But at least from Australians versus the Agenda, Senator Alex Antic says he will vote no on the, and this is what the bill is actually called, Combating Anti-Semitism, Hate and Extremism Bill, regardless of what the coalition decides to do next week.
From where I sit, though, it makes life a lot easier, because rather than voting no to 4 separate bills like I intend to be doing, I'll be voting no to one block. I have absolutely no intention, regardless of the position adopted by the coalition, frankly, of supporting this bill and all of the hate crime stuff that goes with it. We have enough laws on the books in this country as it is. Firearms owners in this country do not need any more imposts on them. And look, there are. I mean, look, we could go on for an hour about the holes in this legislation and the concerns. It opens up new categories of crimes. It gives the ASIO director the ability to recommend that certain groups be dictated to be hate crimes groups. Now, where that leads to is anyone's guess, but I'm concerned about the slippery slope on this. And what are the next groups? I mean, obviously, we all have a problem with the hate crime, the hate preaching and whatever else. But once the door's open to this becomes a very difficult precedent for freedoms in this country and free speech. I just don't support any of it. And I hope that is the position adopted by the coalition. And this is the...
Yeah, and there's still one good politician left in Australia, and I guess, because I thought they were all gone, or...
there's a few they get silenced and censored, but... But at least, and again, he has the...
Common sense. Everything he said was just common sense. One thing leads to another, and they're trying to consolidate power with the elites and the government.
And also, what is always worrying when these kinds of proposals or laws are trying to be passed is, okay, right now, yes, it's those that want to pass it that would benefit the most. But what happens if the opposition gets in somehow and not gets rid of them, but continues to implement it, but now against those that originally passed it?
Yeah.
And that's the one thing apparently nobody thinks about.
Well, and this is why everybody needs to be equal under the law. You don't need specialty groups or specialty classes, period.
Mm-hmm. And now we're going to read some comments. Ethel says, no one can bankrupt the BBC. British people will graciously cover all the expenses through their taxes, and the BBC will be back on their feet. I don't know.
It's getting harder. It's getting harder and harder because people are watching on their phones and their computers. So they can't charge a BBC tax for phones and computers. They're only allowed to charge on televisions. They're going to have to expand that law, and I think there will be pushback on that.
Hopefully. Ethel also says, lesson learned, never write anything in chats that do not have self-expiring messages and anti-screenshot implementation. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that or don't actually.
Well, actually,
do
the UK and the EU are trying to put it into that. We didn't have the story today, but yeah, they're trying to pass new legislation. So there has to be a backdoor into these encrypted messaging systems and self-deleting messaging systems. So they think they're going to solve everything by more legislation, more authoritarianism, hopefully.
and giving themselves more power to do so.
Yeah, hopefully people in the tech sector keep innovating and staying one step ahead.
And against that, not supporting it or helping them figure out how to do it. But let's move on to the Middle East now. Where we still have the Indian flag.
Well, I like that.
But there have been quite a few things happening in the Middle East. However, we have kind of reserved ourselves from fully talking about it because with specifically this case, there's no full way to know what's true, what's not, what's propaganda, what's narrative, what's
Well, I have
happening.
a propaganda story coming up within this section anyway.
Eric Doherty says, quote, the United States is withdrawing some personnel from multiple bases in the Middle East as tensions flare with Iran.
Ago, meanwhile, got some breaking news. You see this map on your screen. That is where the United States has military bases throughout the Middle East. Now, we can confirm that the U.S. is withdrawing some personnel from major bases across the Middle East due to heightened regional tensions. And you look at some of this in Qatar, that's the Al Udeid Air Base. You got about 8,000 to 10,000 U.S. service members. That's one of the larger bases. You got another Army base in Kuwait that's been operating for some time now, several years, if not decades. So how much of withdrawal, we do not know.
And why?
And why is the ultimate question as to whether or not we are.
Okay, and that was the same clip I used for the immigration section. But in the immigration context, I was talking about if they do a regime change there, there's going to be mass immigration coming from Iran. I do not want to see a regime change in Iran. I think they need to cool tensions or hand this off to Israel. Israel can take care of their own region of the world. This is so far removed from the United States. I don't want to see it.
We also have this from Alex Jones, says, quote, video shocks the world, footage from inside Iran's capital city. Tehran shows majority of women don't wear Islamic head coverings, clearly debunking Western media reports.
And we'll just play the beginning of this because it's quite a long clip, but I've known about this for quite a while. For quite a few years now, you haven't had to have a hijab in Iran. They've actually been reforming a lot of the policies and westernizing. It's still a Islamic state, but as far as an Islamic state goes, they've been westernizing their laws.
But what about that girl that that did get ended?
There's a lot of propaganda that comes out of Iran. And one of the big things, this has been done through legislation. This has been talked about quite a bit. A lot of people just don't know it.
I was, surprised to find out that I could go out with showing my hair and nothing happened to me. I think that there is a lot of propaganda out there about, the liberal world order and what it wants to impose on Iran.
Hi everyone, this is Syrian Girl and I'm shopping in Iran's capital Tehran with a beautiful Iranian guide just to show how much propaganda there is about women's life here to promote regime change. So hop in friends, we're going shopping. We're in Iran. It's really cool. Let's go to the store that has music.
Okay, you can kind of leave it there. And I just wanted to grab a video to show people on the ground in Iran. People, by law, they don't have to wear them. Now, if you're in the countryside, I'm sure tribes, villagers, and basic morality standards are going to be different, and it's going to be imposed by the population. But under the legislation in the country, they've actually really westernized a lot of their laws over the years, and that's why going in for a regime change, I just don't see it. I just don't see a justification for it.
But then could it maybe that be also propaganda from the other side? And
No, because I've seen a lot. The only reason I chose that clip was because she was actually on the ground. So I wanted to show people she's in the mall on the ground, but there's tons of video coming out of this. And I've already known about this for years.
Okay. Because I used to work at a high school in Vancouver, 2 high schools, and we did have a big Iranian student population. And a lot of the girls specifically did say that they didn't want to go back because they had to wear hijabs. And that they liked Canada because it was free.
Yeah, families impose the hijab on members of their families, but the government
No, they were saying the
legislation.
government.
Yeah, it's not like that. It's not like that anymore. You can look it up. I've already researched it.
Okay, well, that was 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
When did the law pass?
I don't know.
Okay. Ethel says, Nat, you need to update your Middle East picture over the tape. India is not part of the Middle East yet before the UAE bought all of it, which will take some time. You're looking too far into the future. I didn't want to put the India flag. He's the one that said, oh, India is the most recognizable flag in the Middle East. And I said, India is not in the Middle East. And he said, yes, it is. And it was a big debate that we had, but I ended up putting it on there because he said all the other flags look too similar.
Yeah, it looks, a lot of countries in the Middle East, their flags look similar to other countries. India has a very distinctive flag. Plus, India has the third biggest military in the world, so I think they're the big player within that region.
But Ethel, I agree with you. We should have. See, Ethel says Nat was right about everything. Thank you. And I agree with you. We should not have an India flag there.
Women stick together.
Ethel's not a woman, it's a man.
Oh.
He's told us multiple times he's a dude. And you cut, because it's Ethel as... I'm shortening the username because a full name
What's the full name?
Ethylene diamine, and I think it's some kind of chemical.
Okay. Well,
but I say Ethel because
when
I
you
can't
say
say
Ethel,
the whole
it
thing.
tricks me. You're trying to trick me.
It's ETHYLENE.
Okay.
And he was always laughing because I'm right. We shouldn't put the India flag on there.
Okay.
I'll change it for Friday.
Well, what region's India in then? If you're saying they're not in the Middle East.
It's not Middle East. It's usually they usually call it Eastern Asia. East Asian. They call it East Asians.
Okay, I
In
would
the
say
UK at least, they call Indian people East
Middle
Asians. No.
Okay. Yes.
No.
Okay. Let's move on.
That's where a lot of the confusion about the Pakistani disgusting gangs came from, because they kept saying East Asian men, and people were thinking like Asian men.
Okay.
From Ryan Gertison, quote, "One would think with so many doctors and engineers, they could solve this problem. I guess they sent too many to Canada." What happened? Looks like a dam.
You can smell it. How much sewage is coming out there right now?
150 million liters per day.
How many people's sewage is that?
1 million.
So that's a shit of 1 million people flowing into the Ganga every day.
Yeah. This is just one drain.
Environmental scientist Rakesh Jaiswal has been campaigning for a cleaner Ganges for 25 years.
Today, Ganga is more polluted than it was 30 years ago. And to last 24 years, I have seen the situation worsening only. No improvement at all.
In total, drains along the Ganges empty 1 billion gallons of raw sewage and industrial waste into the river every day. Decomposing bodies make their way into the water from riverside crematoriums. And in Kanpur, hundreds of tanneries release toxic chemicals and heavy metals into the river, which is the city's source of water.
Half of Kanpur city, including me, was getting drinking water from River Ganga. The water there was highly contaminated, containing city wastewater and also a contaminated discharge from TB hospital, tuberculosis hospital.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ew.
And I mean,
but I mean,
with a slight investment, massive impact can be made within India.
Yeah.
The government really needs to do something there.
But I mean, the Ganges has always, ever since I was a little kid, has always been gross and disgusting.
Yeah, but you can just filter out right at the head of the river.
Yes, but they just won't do it.
Okay.
Okay, let's read. Ethel says, "I never stated my gender. I am a girl for Guy, but I'm a man for Nat, to be attractive for both of you."
It's because you kept calling her Ethel, and I didn't know.
It's not her, it's a him.
I know, but because you kept calling him Ethel, that's why I thought.
Because I didn't
know. I didn't even know you were shortening the name.
Yeah, I said a long time ago. I said, "Okay, I'm gonna just call you Ethel because I can't say the full name."
I can't remember things.
Okay. It's your fault. Ethel says, okay, Ethylene, I don't even know how to say it. Ethel says, use the Iranian flag, but only the one with the lion. It will make the Middle East look really aggressive and bold. There was also a huge fight amongst my students about which flag was the correct flag of Iran. So,
and I'm just logging in.
I wasn't a teacher. I was but I worked at high school. But now we're moving on to RUMBLE, which is where Neo and Ethel already are. So join them there, YouTube people, because the next stories we are talking about are a little bit spicy and or cannot be said on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube, and we will see you on Friday. No, we will see you on RUMBLE right now.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm in the YouTube now. Oh, hold on. No, I need to do this first. Sorry.